I died the year I loved him most. He threw away his endless fortune. He abandoned his absolute power. He chose to burn to ashes right beside me. My eyes snapped open. I was 10 years in the past. Right after our wedding. The exact moment I despised him most. I grabbed my heavy skirts and sprinted straight to his study. The second I saw his face, my throat tightened. Huaixu. I am so sorry. He froze. A dead, hollow look washed over his face. He let out a rigid breath. Tell me, how exactly do you plan to torture me this time? When the roaring flames swallowed everything, I remembered one thing clearly. Huaixu never made it out. The untouchable, immaculate man knelt in the ash. He pulled me tightly against his chest. Ning, do not be afraid. I am right here with you. He was 38. Endless fortune. Absolute power. He threw it all away. He chose to burn to ashes right beside me. A heavy, suffocating darkness followed. Stifling midsummer wind brushed past my skin. I snapped awake, gasping, staring blankly at the carved wooden canopy of my bed. The water clock dripped steadily in the corner. The daily calendar lay open on my desk. Madam, his lordship sent word. My head maid Lu spoke softly from the outer room. He has urgent business tonight. He will not be returning to your room. I looked down. A flawless, blood-red wedding bangle rested on my wrist. I squeezed my eyes shut. I had traveled back 10 years in time. The raging hellfire felt too real. His warm, broad embrace still lingered on my skin. In my dying moments, Huaixu had whispered against my ear. Ning, do not fear. I waited too long for you in this life. In the next, I promise, I will find you sooner. Was I dreaming then, or am I dreaming now? I pinched my arm hard. A sharp ache shot through my flesh. A distant horse whinnied outside. My chaotic thoughts cleared instantly. The initial shock faded, quickly replaced by a crushing wave of grief and regret. A vicious, orchestrated misunderstanding had poisoned my mind. I resented Huaixu for years. All the while, his political rivals cornered him relentlessly. They bled him dry body and soul. Within our own home, I offered him nothing but cold glares. Eventually, he stopped coming to my room. Huaixu had lost his parents young. He had no family left. He guarded his immense power and endless wealth, living half his life in absolute isolation. I only learned the truth years later. We finally shared half a year of genuine happiness. I even carried his child. But before I could share the joyous news, death claimed us both. I took a shaky breath, burying my face in my hands. Madam, the rare flowers you ordered are packed in the carriage. Shall we head out? Lu parted the beaded curtains and stepped inside. What? My mind was still spinning. The flowers. Weren't we going to see young Master Songyan today? Songyan. That name hit me like a physical blow. I froze. A single thread pulled free from my tangled thoughts. I had returned to this exact day. Songyan was my childhood friend, a brilliant, unparalleled musician. But a sudden, mysterious fire had ruined him. Severe burns scarred his entire body, trapping him in a medical pavilion for years of recovery. In my past life, I took those rare flowers to the pavilion. After celebrating Songyan's birthday, I walked out and found Huaixu standing alone by my carriage. He was rubbing his white jade thumb ring, lost in thought. I had not offered a single word of explanation. I had not even wanted to look at him. Ning. Huaixu spotted me. He stopped his restless movement and took a step forward. His voice carried a crushing loneliness. He looked away, his jaw tightening. Today is my birthday too. I stopped in my tracks. I shot him a freezing glare. So what? Huaixu stared at me, his dark, profound eyes completely silent. I snapped at him. Today is Songyan's birthday too. To force me into this marriage, you played dirty. You ruined his face. You destroyed his future. How the hell do you expect me to treat you? Huaixu opened his mouth. A desperate, futile defense slipped out. It was an accident. If you had not invited him to your banquet, he would not be rotting in that pavilion right now, living a fate worse than death. My voice cracked with fury. How can I possibly believe it was an accident? Huaixu fell silent. The light left his eyes. I am sorry, he finally whispered. From that day on, our relationship shattered completely. We plunged into a long, agonizing Cold War. I only learned the truth much later. That tragic accident was a carefully orchestrated plot by his enemies to tear us apart. Madam, everything is loaded. Lu's voice snapped me back to the present. If we delay any longer, the main street will be too congested. I glanced out the window. The sun was half sunken. The sky was turning dark. I jolted into action. I grabbed my heavy cloak, throwing it over my shoulders in a panic, and rushed into the carriage. A terrifying, exhilarating realization hit me. This was 10 years ago. I still had time. I could fix everything. The driver cracked his whip. We merged into the bustling street. Madam, the alley leading to the pavilion is blocked by carriages from other estates. Should I send a runner ahead? Tell young Master Song Yin to wait. The driver trailed off, waiting for my command. Cancel the pavilion. I stared at the red lanterns flickering to life along the street. I made my choice. Take me to the Chancellor's office. I gripped the edge of my seat. Truthfully, I barely remembered what his government office looked like. In my youth, I despised him too much to ever set foot in his domain. By the time I finally fell in love with him, he was already surrounded by political assassins. The court was a viper's nest. I never dared to visit, terrified I would become his weakness. So here I stood, facing a sprawling maze of imposing pavilions, completely lost. Which of these towering buildings belonged to my own husband? Passing officials cast curious glances my way. I clutched a massive bouquet of rare flowers. I wore a luxurious silk gown and an elaborate heavy hairpin. I looked exactly like a naive noblewoman sneaking out to meet a secret lover. I shifted uncomfortably. I unhooked the jade token from my waist, the symbol of his ultimate authority, and handed it to the grim-faced guard. Please pass a message to Huaixu. Tell him I cannot find his main hall. The guard's expression twisted into utter bewilderment. The Grand Chancellor's legal wife could not locate her own husband's office. Worse, she was standing on his front steps, shedding massive silent tears. Huaixu was apparently in the middle of a high-stakes cabinet meeting. Upon hearing the guard's absurd report, he froze. We conclude here for today, he commanded the ministers. Then he turned to the guard. Tell her not to move a single inch. I am coming down. Moments later, Huaixu strode out of the heavy crimson doors. His tall, formidable frame cut through the lantern light. He wore his scarlet official robes. He looked untouchable. Immaculate. Perfect. I caught my own reflection in a muddy puddle. The tears had carved ugly streaks through my thick makeup. I looked like a deranged ghost. I had ruined the moment completely. Why are you here? His tone was faint, dangerously close to freezing. I whipped my head around. The tall, devastatingly handsome man stared down at me. His dark pupils reflected my disastrous tear-stained face. A flicker of shock cracked his composed expression. No matter the time or place, Huaixu was flawlessly put together. Like a rare flower blooming on an unreachable snowy peak. Completely disconnected from the mortal world. I am sorry. I lowered my head, suddenly terrified to meet his gaze. I interrupted your affairs. My voice trembled. Today. He managed a single word before cutting himself off. I knew exactly what he was swallowing down. Today I was supposed to be at the pavilion. I was supposed to be celebrating Song Yan's birthday, not standing on his steps. That snapped me back to reality. I shoved the massive bouquet of flowers aggressively into his chest. Happy birthday, I mumbled awkwardly. A heavy, suffocating silence descended. I risked a glance upward. He was staring down at the extravagant bouquet. There was zero joy in his eyes, only a chilling void. Finally, the corner of his mouth twitched into a bitter, mocking smile. Ning! He rejected these. Didn't he? What? I caught the dangerous shift in his energy. My eyes darted to the flowers in his arms. My stomach plummeted. I realized my mistake immediately. They were rare, exotic blue jade hairpins from the western regions. The flower's notorious meaning. May we remain side by side, like the eternal stars. Song Yan's absolute favorite poetic phrase. My brain had been too scrambled from waking up. I had been blindly obsessed with finding Huaixu immediately. I completely forgot this lethal detail. No, wait, I'm sorry. I stammered, reaching out. Thank you for the birthday gift. Huaixu's voice was brutally harsh. It is late. Have the driver take you back to the estate. He spun on his heel, his robe swishing violently, ready to walk away. Panic flared in my chest. I lunged forward and grabbed a fistful of his wide sleeve. Wait. Huaixu had not expected such a reckless move. His momentum kept him moving forward. He dragged me along, throwing me off balance. I tripped and crashed hard into his broad, solid back. My tear-streaked, colorful makeup smeared violently across the back of his pristine scarlet robes. Huaixu slowly turned his head. He stared down at my knuckles gripped tightly around his fine silk robes. He stayed dead silent for a terrifyingly long time. The pure stubbornness in my bones flared up. I lifted my chin. Huaixu, I am not going back. His expression turned devastatingly hollow. He let out an exhausted breath. Ning, tell me, how exactly do you plan to torture me this time? That question felt like a knife to the chest. How could I even answer that? The memories hit me then. Right now we were newly married. I was in the middle of throwing a massive, prolonged tantrum. I was 23. He was 28. Every single one of our fights was entirely one-sided. It was just me being fiercely unreasonable. I weaponized my words. I specifically hunted for the exact phrases that would inflict maximum pain. Even my holiday gifts to him were calculated daggers aimed straight at his heart. I had played the boy who cried wolf far too many times. I had tormented him until he no longer believed a single drop of my sincerity. I suddenly remembered my strategy from my past life, right after the truth finally surfaced. My tactic had been brutally simple. I had just tackled him onto the bed. This man looked utterly untouchable and terrifyingly proud. But in reality he was shockingly easy to coax. But tackling him would not work today. He was too raw. He had endured far too much agony and humiliation at my hands. This time I needed to do the work. I needed to make amends. I hesitated, then spoke softly. Let us share a meal. Huaixu lowered his gaze. His voice was pure ice. No need. I have official matters to resolve tonight. Then I will have someone order a feast from the tavern. I shamelessly matched his stride, following right behind him. And a bowl of longevity noodles for you. He refused to say a word. He refused to even look at me. His fingers were still curled tightly around those western blue jade hairpins. As we passed the wastebasket in the corridor, I expected him to throw them away without a second thought. He did not. I trailed him all the way into his main study. It was completely empty. A cold food box sat untouched on his massive sandalwood desk. He had not even moved the chopsticks. Was he planning to starve himself tonight? A sudden sharp ache pierced my chest. I immediately called for the guards outside, ordering them to fetch longevity noodles from the best tavern in the capital. Clear broth, light salt, absolutely no green onions. I added a side of tender stewed beef and a few bland side dishes. Not a single trace of spice. In the past, Huaixu always catered to my tastes. Every meal we shared was heavily spiced and oily. Only later did I learn his stomach was incredibly fragile. He could not handle anything spicy, greasy, or salty. Orders given, I sat on the rosewood couch, completely at a loss for words. Anything I said right now would feel incredibly hollow. Huaixu was unwrapping the silk around the bouquet, preparing to place the flowers into a celadone vase. Those exotic blue jade flowers pierced my eyes like physical thorns. Without a second thought, I marched over, snatched them from his hands, and hurled them violently into the wastebasket. He froze. A drop of dark red blood welled up on his thumb where a stem had pricked him. He let out a bone-deep sigh. Ning, have you thrown enough of a tantrum? No. I swallowed the bitter ache in my throat. I hated how he acted like a lifeless wooden statue, letting me walk all over him without a single spark of anger. Forget those. You didn't like them. I will find you something else. Huaixu pulled out a plain white silk handkerchief and pressed it against his bleeding finger. His dark eyes lowered. He murmured in utter defeat. Let it be. I ignored him. I grabbed the ruined flowers from the bin and threw a command over my shoulder. Wait for me right here. I grabbed my skirts and bolted out of the hall. It was a midsummer evening. The main street was lined with flower girls carrying woven baskets. These were common blooms, nothing like the ridiculously expensive, rare breeds sold in the capital's grandest floral shops. I sprinted down half the street, buying up every single red peony I could find. I wrapped them roughly in coarse oil paper into one massive bouquet. Just then, the tavern runner arrived with the food box. With the flowers in my left hand and the heavy wooden box in my right, I ran back up to his pavilion, panting heavily. The high-towered hall felt even more desolate than before. The few remaining officials had already gone home. Only a single dim yellow lantern burned inside Huaixu's main study. I softened my footsteps and gently pushed open the heavy carved doors. He stood with his back to me, his hands clasped behind him, staring out the open window. His silhouette was painfully lonely. He looked exactly like an abandoned hound left to die in the wilderness. The heavy bouquet and food box in my hands accidentally knocked against the doorframe with a dull thud. His back stiffened violently. He whipped around and saw me, practically collapsing under the weight of everything I carried. "Hey, why are you just standing there? Come help me," I grumbled, out of breath. He clearly never expected me to return. After a brief flash of shock, he closed the distance in quick, long strides. He took the flowers and the box with one hand. His other arm wrapped firmly under my shoulders, practically lifting me off the ground and settling me onto the soft couch. I caught my breath. A thin layer of sweat coated my forehead, but I gave him a bright, curved smile. "For you. I bought every single red peony on the main street." A complete blankness washed over his devastatingly handsome face. I cursed inwardly. He was completely unaccustomed to me treating him with warmth. Did I really have to mock him for him to react? I watched him turn back, reaching for the old stone-cold food box. I let out a deliberate, dramatic gasp of pain. Huaixu spun around instantly. I perfectly caught the brief flash of panic and tension in his eyes. I leaned back lazily against the couch, lifting my chin high. I faked a look of absolute impatience. "Can you not eat something warm for once? Watching you swallow cold leftovers sickens me." Huaixu fell utterly silent. For the next hour, my complaints echoed relentlessly through the empty hall. "Do you even know how to eat? Are you blind to that massive piece of stewed meat? No greens? How old are you to still be a picky eater? Hurry up and eat the noodles. Did I buy them for you to stare at?" After my endless verbal whipping, he finally finished the steaming bowl of noodles. Worried he wasn't full, I dropped 2 soft steamed rolls onto his plate. I even slid my own paper bag of sweet osmanthus cakes over to his side. If I had to lecture him like this every day, I would die of exhaustion. My throat was burning dry. Suddenly, a cup of clear, warm tea was placed right in front of me. I looked up and met his steady gaze. "Wet your throat first," he said quietly. "Then you can keep scolding me." The freezing aura around him had softened. His deep eyes were still as dead water, but he had finally dropped some of his icy guard. I fought the overwhelming urge to pull him into my arms. I looked at him dead in the eye. "Huaixu, from now on let us live our lives well." His long lashes fluttered down. He averted his gaze. Without a word, he quietly gathered the empty bowls and chopsticks, completely dodging my promise. "Put your cloak on. I will have the driver take you back to the estate." But I barely just arrived. He shoved the doors open and walked out incredibly fast. His fleeing silhouette looked exactly like a man terrified and running for his life. After all, the Supreme Chancellor never needed to do a servant's chore like clearing dishes. I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed. Coming back to life felt like waking from a dream, but somehow this man was even harder to coax than before. I sat alone on the soft couch, plotting my next move. Should I just tackle him now? Or should I pour my heart out first and then tackle him? An urgent voice outside the door shattered my thoughts. It was Song Yan's personal servant. I called him inside, my mind completely elsewhere. The servant flawlessly mimicked his master's anxious tone. "Ning, where are you?" My joyful mood plummeted straight into the abyss. I had completely forgotten about this man's existence. "Your master sent you," I replied. My voice held zero warmth. The servant slipped into Song Yan's usual gentle cadence. "I have waited for you for so long. Did we not promise you would spend my birthday with me today?" Memories of my past life's tragic end flooded my mind. My fingers curled into fists inside my sleeves until my knuckles turned dead white. Go back and tell him this. Song Yan, we are merely childhood acquaintances. Correct. The servant froze. He mechanically recited Song Yan's backup script. My master said if you tried to make excuses I was to tell you. Ning, we are as close as flesh and blood. Flesh and blood. I repeated the words coldly. I suddenly glared at the servant. Ask him. Does he truly have nothing else to confess to me? The servant paused, letting out a soft sigh. My master also said, I am sorry. I shouldn't have hidden it from you and secretly eaten those sweet cream cakes. Just look at him. Why could the favored one always lie, take, and joke without a shred of fear? While Huaixu had to stand like a silent, isolated island, bearing every invisible blade alone. I felt like I had plunged into an icy abyss. I couldn't even force a sneer. I looked at the servant. Go report to your master. I have urgent matters today. I will not be coming. Wish him a happy birthday. After dismissing the servant, I took a deep breath. A suffocating pain seized my chest. Right before I was abducted in my past life, Song Yan had sent someone to frantically ask for my whereabouts just like this. A chilling realization struck me. He was the brother I trusted most. But what if, from the very beginning, that apocalyptic fire was a death trap set by the person closest to me? I snapped my head up. Huaixu was standing quietly outside the door. I had no idea how long he had been there. Half his face was hidden in the dim lantern light, masking his expression entirely. I hesitated, then asked carefully, Did you hear all of that? Yes. Let us go. His voice cut me off, carrying a terrifying, suppressed calmness. The carriage is waiting downstairs. I opened my mouth, completely at a loss. How could I possibly explain past lives, rebirth, and future prophecies to him? He would think I had gone completely insane. I followed him over the threshold. Guilt and sorrow violently churned in my heart. Huaixu. His black boots paused for a fraction of a second, but he stubbornly refused to look back. That was Song Yan's servant. I spoke incredibly fast, terrified he would walk away. Yesterday, I did promise to celebrate his birthday at the medicinal pavilion. But I am completely different today. I came back from 10 years in the future. Huaixu froze completely. He spun around. A thick, crushing layer of frost locked over his deep eyes. Enough. He closed his eyes, fighting desperately to suppress the agonizing storm in his chest. His voice was hoarse. Dinner tonight was delicious. Having you by my side for even half an hour on my birthday. I am already more than satisfied. I stared at him, capturing the devastating agony buried deep within his eyes. All color drained from Huaixu's lips. Every word he spoke trembled with the absolute despair of a man freezing in a winter storm. So in the end, you are still going to the pavilion. To find Song Yan. I accept it. This is the price I pay for forcing you to stay by my side. In our past life, a drunken Huaixu once confessed everything. Every ounce of warmth I offered him cost him 10 times the pain in return. He never dared to ask for more. He was always prepared for the moment I would abandon him. Those words twisted like a bloody blade in my heart. The agony was suffocating. On this exact night in my past life, I never came here. He ate those freezing leftovers alone. In this massive, sprawling world, not a single soul wished him a happy birthday. That was why he drove his carriage to the pavilion, waiting endlessly outside in the dark. All he ever wanted was to hear me say happy birthday. Instead, I cursed him. I told him to mind his own business and get the hell away from me. This delayed realization crashed down on me like a crushing weight. I could barely breathe. He turned his head, refusing to meet my eyes. I apologize. I spoke out of turn. The night is cold and the roads are dangerous. If you are going to the pavilion, you should leave now. I lunged forward. I grabbed his wide sleeve in a death grip. Then I boldly forced my hand into his palm, locking my fingers tightly with his. His massive frame turned to iron, but he did not pull away. His voice was devastatingly hoarse. Ning, what exactly are you trying to do? Haven't you humiliated me enough for one night? I threw my head back. I grabbed the scarlet collar of his robes and Song yanked him down. Husband, do not move. Those simple words worked like an unbreakable curse. He froze entirely. I stood on my tiptoes. I crashed my lips violently against his freezing mouth. The cold, elegant scent of pine and cedar rolling off him shattered under my reckless assault. I wrapped my arms fiercely around the back of his neck. I shoved his towering frame against the freezing stone wall. Then I softened. I kissed him back, gentle and desperate, trying to soothe his broken edges. He went from rigid shock to absolute horror to complete surrender. He squeezed his eyes shut, letting me devour him. I crushed his immaculate official robes into a wrinkled mess. Without realizing it, his hand clamped down on my narrow waist. His grip tightened by the second. He pressed greedily, dominantly against my spine, crushing our bodies seamlessly together. The lantern outside flickered wildly in the wind. We finally broke apart in the dim hall, foreheads resting against each other, panting heavily. Ning! Huaixu's voice was terrifyingly low. He struggled to speak. Do not do this. Do you not like it? No. He fell into a dead silence. After a long pause, he forced the words through his teeth. Stop provoking me. Go find him now, while I still have a shred of sanity left. Can you truly bear it? I leaned closer, my warm breath brushing his ear. I let out a soft, heartbroken whimper. Are you not jealous? Are you not burning with rage? Can you really stomach the thought of me kissing another man? That brutal truth snapped his final tether. He lunged down, sealing my lips fiercely. He completely hijacked the kiss, sweeping me up into his arms. He strode across the room and threw me onto the soft couch. Before I could scream, his scorching palm clamped down on the back of my head. He was a thoroughly enraged beast, crushing down on me like a violent hurricane, pouring out every ounce of his pent-up fury. An invisible smirk tugged at the corner of my mouth. Without extreme measures, this High Chancellor truly believed he was some untouchable saint. But his sudden loss of control was quickly exceeding my calculations. Huaixu! Panic spiked in my chest. Wait! Stop! What are you doing? I meant after we returned to the estate. In the dark, his normally icy voice was lethally deep and intoxicating. I gave you a chance to run. You refused to leave. Now you have no chance at all. The second the words left his mouth, a ruthless, undeniable force flipped me over. I was pinned helplessly against the edge of the couch. The man behind me whispered against my ear like a demon dragging me into the abyss. Ning! Prepare to die. I thought Huaixu's icy, disciplined nature would prevent him from crossing the line. I forgot. In my past life, he was a lunatic who burned himself alive just to die with me. Beneath his flawless, jade-like exterior hid an entirely untamed beast. My weak pleas were entirely swallowed by his devouring kiss. I could only cling helplessly to his neck, my voice trembling with tears. Huaixu, can you not show me a little mercy? He was still burning with rage. My begging fell on deaf ears. I bit my lip, wrapping my arms tight around his broad back. My nose stung. Massive tears fell, splashing hotly against the skin of his shoulder. Huaixu's entire body froze. His movements stopped with terrifying caution. He whispered, I am sorry. I rested my chin on his shoulder. I tilted my head up. Through the silk-lined window, I could see the bright, pristine moon. Huaixu, I already picked out a baby name for our child. I had planned it for so long in my past life. I just never found the chance to tell him. Ning, do not say it. His voice was pure gravel, laced with agonizing restraint. He murmured softly, Do you not believe me? A dead silence answered me. He probably didn't even dare to dream that we could ever share a child. I kept talking regardless. If it is a little boy, or if it is a little girl, you can choose the final name. I completely failed to realize that the man who had just barely clawed back his sanity was plunging straight back into chaos. Huaixu didn't give me another chance to speak. He hoisted my dizzy body into his arms and strode into the inner chamber beside the main hall. The carved wooden doors shut softly. The night wind circled the lattice windows. The moonlight was crystal clear. Behind that single door, only breathless, flushed whispers remained. Deep into the night, my spoiled childhood temper flared up. I kicked him, pouting out of pure frustration. I told him I didn't want him anymore. Huaixu's face darkened. Without a word, he dragged me back into his chest. He lowered his voice. If you do not want me, who do you want? He asked the question with lethal seriousness. My face flushed violently. Anyone but you. He let out a dark grunt, caging me even tighter. That is not up to you. In my nightmares that night, Huaixu's desperate touches violently collided with the apocalyptic hellfire. I collapsed in the flames, covered in blood. Assassins had drenched me in fiercely burning oil. Huaixu tore into the inferno, throwing caution to the wind. He crushed me into his arms, trembling uncontrollably. I saw the edges of his eyes turn blood red. He was actually crying. I could only raise a weak hand, shoving him with everything I had. Get out! A desperate gasp ripped from my throat. Huaixu, I told you to get out. Do not touch me, I beg you. My own agonizing screams shattered the nightmare. His warm touch dissolved instantly like flying ash. I plummeted back into the endless dark. My eyes snapped open. Both my cheeks were freezing and drenched in sweat. It was just a dream. As my senses returned, I realized I had pushed Huaixu all the way to the absolute edge of the canopy bed during my sleep. Judging by his expression, I had definitely been screaming in my sleep. He handed me a plain silk handkerchief. He sat completely rigid on the edge of the bed, 3 feet away. Even his fingertips deliberately avoided touching me. My heart plummeted. He had misunderstood everything. Huaixu. I tried to shatter the suffocating silence. I just had a nightmare. His expression was utterly grim as he sat perfectly straight, listening to me. My throat tightened. A sob broke into my voice. There was a massive fire in my dream. Assassins tied me up with explosives. You insisted on dying right beside me. That is why I panicked and screamed those words. Please do not take it to heart. The deep, dark pools of Huaixu's eyes lit up for a fraction of a second. Then, as if mocking himself, they returned to an absolute dead void. All right. I believe you. With that, he leaned over and tucked the silk quilt around me. He grabbed his pillow and turned to leave for the outer room. Huaixu! I screamed in sheer frustration, glaring at his breathtaking, lonely back. You are lying. He stopped in his tracks. He didn't say a single word. I grabbed a soft pillow and hurled it viciously at his back out of pure spite. Fine. Leave. My entire body aches right now. You ruthless bastard, using me and then turning your back on me. Just leave me here to die alone. I whipped my head away, refusing to look at him. I curled into an angry ball, burying myself entirely under the quilt. They say youth breeds pure stubbornness. The Huaixu from 10 years ago was an impossibly dense block of wood. He wasn't cute at all. The room stayed dead silent for a very long time. Finally, the mattress beside me dipped slightly. Huaixu let out a completely defeated sigh. Go to sleep. I need you to hold me to sleep. He obediently pulled me back against him. He locked me securely inside his embrace, smelling of calming incense. Deep into the night, I stared at the overlapping bed curtains in the dim light. I was completely wide awake. Reborn from this grand dream, too many shattered clues twisted together in my mind. The bandits who kidnapped me in my past life. Their leader had clashed with Huaixu outside the royal court. He was a corrupt merchant whose estate had been seized and titles stripped. And the mysterious fire in Song Yan's medical pavilion all those years ago. That was a master plot orchestrated by my kind-faced, cold-blooded second uncle, specifically designed to destroy my marriage to Huaixu. Every single one of these twisted events were truths I only uncovered in the final year before my death in my past life. Huaixu's shadow guards had always kept my whereabouts absolutely secret. Yet, on my way to a temple outside the city to seek medicine for my unborn child, bandits ambushed me. How did those thugs know my exact route? The only possible leak was the message Song Yan's servant delivered right before I left. And in my dying moments, Huaixu had whispered in my ear, his voice breaking with agony. I should thank Song Yan. If he hadn't pointed the way, I almost wouldn't have found you. They say those trapped in the game are blind to it. Looking back now, what role did Song Yan, my childhood friend, the brother I trusted for over a decade, actually play in this apocalyptic death trap? My mind had raced all night. When morning came, a needle-like headache pierced my skull. Huaixu, I can't get up. How could you be so reckless? I kicked him blindly. He took the hits with a muffled grunt, coaxing me helplessly. Get up and eat some breakfast first. No. I pouted. He really was an impossibly rigid block of wood. I do not like the younger you at all, I snapped. He froze. His temper was shockingly good as he asked, the younger Vami? Exactly. I fiercely snatched the silk quilt from his hands, rolling myself tightly into a cocoon. I prefer the you 10 years from now. Go age by yourself and don't disturb my sleep. I burrowed into the warmest corner of the bed, stretching my limbs out comfortably. The cold, crisp scent of his cedarwood enveloped me completely. I slept straight through to the afternoon. He clearly anticipated I would wake up starving. Exquisite dishes were kept perfectly warm inside the food box on the sandalwood table. The inner chamber was impossibly tidy. Everything was in its exact place. Only my massive canopy bed stood as a chaotic, lawless wasteland in the middle of his strict order. It was a complete mess. Thanks to my reckless demands last night, the fine silk sheets were wrinkled and clawed, completely tangled around his body. But honestly, compared to the calculating 38-year-old mastermind I knew, this 28-year-old Chancellor was outrageously innocent. I shook my head hard, tossing those scandalous, flushed memories out of my mind. I quickly washed up and ate my fill. I grabbed one of Huaixu's oversized inner robes, wrapped it around myself, and pushed the carved doors open just enough to peek out. The outer hall was completely silent. From behind the privacy screen, the hushed voices of several officials debating policy drifted through. The setting sun cast a soft golden glow through the silk-lined windows. The light landed perfectly on Huaixu and his scarlet official robes. It beautifully softened the innate, freezing distance that always surrounded him. My heart gave a violent tremor. My ears burned hot all over again. Huaixu's senses were always razor-sharp. The second the door creaked, his eyes snapped up to meet mine. Seeing me standing there, half-dressed in his robes, the brush in his hand froze mid-air. I let out an awkward cough. I confirmed his subordinates were blocked by the screen and couldn't see inside. Only then did I walk over, blushing deeply, and sat myself right on the edge of his massive mahogany desk. I casually flipped through a stack of letters on the corner. Hidden beneath them were several urgent notes Song Yan had sent overnight, along with transcribed secret messages, all delivered well past midnight. At that hour my mind was already a blurred, exhausted mess. I hadn't heard a single word from the servant outside our door. Could it be? I shot Huaixu a suspicious, knowing look. He was hyper-focused on grading his official documents, acting entirely oblivious to my presence. I let him pretend. I crossed my bare legs over the edge of his desk. My pale calves slipped out from under his oversized robe. I deliberately swung them right in his peripheral vision, completely shameless. Behind the screen, Huaixu's steady, monotone voice suddenly choked. A brief dead silence followed. We conclude today's matters here, he ordered deeply. Dismissed. He leaned back slowly into his heavy armchair, a deep frown creasing his brow. Ning. Oh? Last night it was Ning this and Ning that. Now that the sun is up, it's my full name again. Looking at his righteous, untouchable posture, like a man who completely denied everything he had devoured the night before, anyone else would truly believe he was a pure, ascetical saint. I slid my foot under the desk, playfully tracing his black boot hidden beneath his official robes. Husband, did anyone come looking for me last night? His face remained as calm as a placid lake. He lowered his eyes. I didn't notice. Is that so? I leaned halfway across his massive desk. I grabbed his collar and pulled him forcefully toward me. He could be the deepest schemer in the world. He could hide it flawlessly. But to me, he was just a hot-blooded, stubborn young man. Ning, this is my official working hour. He scolded me with the full, stern authority of the High Chancellor. But his slightly erratic, hurried breathing betrayed him completely. Otherwise, I really would have thought he was an emotionless lord of the underworld. Oh. I leaned closer, brushing my lips against his like a falling feather. Do you want more? His entire body went rigid. He fell into a long, agonizing silence. Finally, a single brutally honest word rolled from his throat. Yes. I let out a low laugh and kissed him hard. I'll go warm the bed inside. Finish your work, and we will head home together. After I changed back into my own clothes, Song Yan's servant arrived with another urgent letter. He knelt on the floor, reciting the secret message word for word. Ning, I left the pavilion. The servant flawlessly mimicked his master's exhausted, hoarse voice. He must have stayed awake all night. I frowned in surprise. He's severely burned. How could he leave the pavilion? My master says he is stopping the treatments. The servant's voice hit rock bottom. If his face can never be restored, he would rather give up. He just wants to find a quiet water town in the south with you, and live a peaceful life. My frown deepened. Go back and tell him this. There is no future for us. Besides, I am already married to another man. My master predicted you would say that. The servant looked up. He asks, then what am I supposed to do? Did you treat all our vows as a joke? Are you disgusted by me now because my face is ruined? I opened my mouth then shut it. My voice turned freezing cold. He was the one who said it back then. He said he had to cut all ties with me so the capital's biggest music guild would promote him. That was his path to fame in the royal court. But my master said you personally promised to wait for him. And how long was I supposed to wait? I sighed, completely exhausted. He had endless chances to take me away. Instead, he chose to leave me stranded, suffering in the dark. My second uncle was a ruthless beast who would do anything for power. My parents abandoned me at the estate the moment I was born. They left the capital, settled in distant provinces, and started entirely new families. I was nothing but a disposable pawn, kept only to secure political alliances for the family. While Song Yan was rising to absolute stardom in the capital's music guilds, earning standing ovations, my uncle had cornered me. I was completely out of options. That night, I sent someone to wait outside his music guild until dawn. I sent countless desperate, blood-stained letters begging for help. Every single one was returned unopened. The next day, rumors exploded about his scandalous, flirtatious performance with the city's top courtesan. My heart completely died. I finally broke down and accepted my uncle's forced marriage. The servant stared at me intently. He delivered Song Yan's final, desperate question. Ning, have you truly fallen for the Chancellor? I didn't hesitate for a single second. I love him. For the next few days, Song Yan did not send a single word. I spent my time calculating. If I wanted to hunt down the true mastermind behind my brutal murder in my past life, I needed Huaixu's absolute power. But step one was making him believe I had returned from the future. I had to do it carefully, or he would think I had gone completely insane and lock me in the estate's darkroom. So after this noble daughter was reborn, she secretly started hunting the traitors who executed her entire family in her past life. Holding the ultimate advantage of knowing the future is truly a wonderful thing. Husband, aren't you curious how she turned the tables and crushed them all? I leaned my elbows on the mahogany desk, practically hovering over Huaixu, narrating the story with massive enthusiasm. This was the third Reborn for Revenge novel I had read to him this month. Huaixu kept grading his official papers, but he listened with absolute focus. If you truly enjoy these bizarre folktales, I will open the treasury. I will hire the capital's best theater troupe to adapt them into plays, performing for you every single day. It's not about whether I like it or not. What matters is, do you believe it? Do you like it? He lowered his eyes, glancing at his oversized inner robe that I had completely wrinkled by wearing it as casual clothes. He sighed helplessly. Whatever you like, I naturally like. I refused to let it go. I slammed my ivory folding fan onto his desk like a judge's gavel. Then tell me your thoughts on this story. Huaixu just stared at me. We had grown much closer these past few days. He accommodated my every whim. He gave me absolutely everything I asked for. But I still felt an unbreakable layer of frost between us. Huaixu. I dragged a cushioned stool over and sat perfectly straight, right across from him. My face turned dead serious. I think it is time I told you the entire truth. He set down his ink brush. He sat up straight, assuming a perfectly attentive posture. Speak. I put on a deeply dramatic, pained expression. I lowered my voice to a whisper. The truth is, I am also a reincarnated soul. I came back from 10 years in the future. Silence. A long, suffocating, dead silence. Huaixu's sharp, elegant eyebrow twitched upward. His lips pressed into a tight line. He was fighting desperately to hold back his laughter. I pointed a finger right at his face. Aha! You don't believe me at all. Keep going, Ning. A fraction of a smile slipped through the corner of his mouth before he forced it away. His voice was warm. I believe you. I threw caution to the wind. I poured out every tragic, bloody detail and conspiracy from my past life. At first, he listened quietly, treating me like a babbling toddler showing off a trick she just learned from a storybook. But gradually, his brows locked together. His eyes turned freezing cold. I knew then. The hidden political plots I described had struck exactly at the heart of his current reality. The thug who drenched me in burning oil. His last name is Fong. He used to be a strategist under your command before he betrayed you and started his own faction. Of course, this is 10 years ago. I don't know where he is hiding right now. Also, my second uncle is deeply involved. And finally, you absolutely must beware of Song Yan. Before I could finish his name, urgent knocking violently interrupted me. The guard reported from outside, sliding a bloodstained, broken jade pendant through the door. Huaixu and I stared at the single character carved into the jade at the exact same time. Song Yan. My mind had been a chaotic mess these past few days. I completely forgot to order the servants to burn all the old gifts Song Yan had sent to the estate. The warmth vanished from Huaixu's face instantly. He reverted straight back to his untouchable, coldly distant armor. He stood up, picking up his celadone teacup. I am going to the outer room to wash my hands. That suffocating feeling rushed back. It was his deliberate, calculated evasion. Deep down he was still terrified. I gritted my teeth. I snatched up the broken jade pendant and ordered the messenger outside to come in. I followed Huaixu into the side tea room. He stood with his back to the door, scooping well water to rinse a teacup. What other final words did Song Yan order you to deliver? I commanded the servant coldly. Speak every single word in front of the Chancellor. The ragged servant scrambled inside and collapsed to his knees. Choking back sobs, he mimicked Song Yan's hollow, fading voice. Ning, this might be the last time I send you a message. The boy trembled violently. When my master said this, the wind was howling so fiercely it almost tore his words away. My chest tightened painfully. Where is he right now? I demanded. At the very top of the White Deer Academy's library tower. The servant shuddered. His voice was so faint. He told me to ask you. Ning, do you remember? The day my parents died, you told me your own family never truly loved you either. You said from that day on, we would be each other's flesh and blood. When I was 20, I tried to jump from that exact tower. You pulled me back. When my master spoke, he was completely broken, drowning in regret. Now you do not want me anymore. I am entirely alone in this world. There is no point in living. A deafening ring exploded in my ears. Song Yan, do not do anything stupid. I spun around, grabbing my heavy cloak and throwing it over my shoulders. Go keep him steady. I screamed at the servant. I am coming right now. The servant fled. I whipped my head back. Huaixu was still standing silently by the copper basin, his back turned to me. He acted as if he hadn't heard a single word. The only sound was the steady drip of water from his wooden ladle. My eyes burned hot with panic. I lunged forward and grabbed his arm. Why are you just standing there? Hurry up and change into something light. You are coming with me. He stumbled slightly from my force. His midnight eyes locked onto mine. Change my clothes. How could I go see another man alone? I am a married woman. I paced frantically, the words spilling out. Huaixu, I give you 10 seconds to take off those heavy robes. I will send someone to alert the city guards right now. This is sheer madness. The academy students haven't even finished their evening studies. If he jumps in front of everyone, it will cause an absolute terrifying scandal. I am ready. In the blink of an eye, Huaixu stood by the door. He wore a sharp, pitch-black martial outfit, looking incredibly lethal and clean. I froze in surprise. He moved entirely too fast. Fortunately, Huaixu drove the carriage himself, saving us the agonizing delay of waking the estate drivers. The city guards had beaten us there. They had the academy completely surrounded. The head captain warned me strictly against sending any more runners up to provoke Song Yan. As long as his obsession with seeing me kept him hanging on, He wouldn't jump immediately. They were using this precious window to evacuate the remaining students from the grounds. Huaixu drove the horses at a breakneck pace while maintaining absolute control. We reached the White Deer Academy in an instant. Violent winds whipped around the top floor of the library tower. Yet, they did nothing to blow away the suffocating midsummer heat. The massive academy was terrifyingly silent. Guards stood yards away from Song Yan, holding their shields and blades tight, completely terrified to step any closer. The captain led me to the foot of the top floor stairs. "Madam, he refuses to move until he sees you. Please stall him. My men are setting up the crash mats at the bottom right now." I glanced back at Huaixu. He was blocked behind the guard's perimeter. He gave me a slow grounding nod. I took a sharp breath of cold air and climbed the steps. "Song Yan," I called out softly. The fragile silhouette teetering on the lethal edge shifted. He slowly turned his head. The lantern light exposed his profile, half of his face brutally ruined by the fire. "Ning, you really came." Staring at him, my mind drifted. It felt like an eternity since I had actually looked at him. In my past life, after reconciling with Huaixu, I visited Song Yan's pavilion a few times. He had violently rejected me then. It made sense. When you fiercely hate someone for years, only to realize the true culprit is someone else entirely, that obsession doesn't just vanish. Later, when Huaixu was surrounded by enemies in the court, I hid deep inside the estate, terrified of causing trouble. Merging my past and present lives, I hadn't seen him face to face in over a year. "Song Yan, the wind is too strong up here. Step down first, please." He ignored my plea completely. He just kept his hollow gaze fixed on me. "I am sorry." His eyes drifted past the barricade of guards, landing on Huaixu standing in the distance. A bleak, tragic smile broke across his scarred face. "You were right. I was far too extreme, too stubborn. You clearly told me before your wedding that you only saw me as a brother. My obsession ran too deep. I was too greedy." Memories flashed in my mind, the agonizing years we survived together, relying only on each other. When the street thugs beat us, he threw himself over me, taking every brutal kick and punch meant for my bones. When my uncle threw me out into the streets, he searched through a torrential midnight storm with a single paper umbrella, finding me and carrying me home on his back. For a split second, my conviction wavered. Was he really the mastermind? Was he truly the monster who threw me into the hellfire? Song Yan let out a desolate laugh. "You promised me once. You said you would celebrate my birthday with me every single year. Sing me one last lullaby now. If you do, I will step down myself." "All right. I will sing." The howling wind seemed to quiet down. A soft, melodic tune drifted out into the endless night. But a strange realization hit me. While I sang this lullaby to him, my mind was entirely somewhere else. I suddenly remembered I had forgotten to properly celebrate Huaixu's birthday. The moment we got home, I had to sing one for him to make up for it. The song ended. Song Yan slowly stood up from the deadly edge, turning to face me completely. "Thank you. I haven't heard your voice in years. It sounds like heaven. I have one last question for you." His voice was incredibly faint, shattered by the wind. "Ask. In your heart, did you ever truly love me?" I fell into a suffocating silence. It took me a long time to force the words out of my dry throat. "You are my closest brother." From the moment he stepped onto that grand stage for fame and power, abandoning me in the dark, he sealed his fate. He could only ever be a brother. Song Yan's deep eyes pierced through the rows of guards. He seemed to be staring down Huaixu in the distance. The wind on the roof chilled me to the bone. My voice trembled. "Can we just go back now?" Song Yan slowly pulled his gaze back. A shallow, peaceful smile broke across his face. "Ning, I have loved you for a very long time." Without another word, he spread his arms wide like a bird with broken wings. He leaned entirely backward, plunging straight into the thick, endless abyss of the night. Time froze. Every drop of blood in my veins turned to ice. A second later, pure panic seized my brain. I lunged wildly toward the edge. "Song Yan." My hands grasped nothing but empty night air. The pitch-black ground below looked like the bloody jaws of an ancient beast. Song Yan's body was swallowed silently by the abyss. I hung over the ledge, staring blankly at the darkness below. My mind was completely empty. A heavy, sickening thud echoed into my ears. My legs gave out entirely. I collapsed onto the stone floor. Was he really dead? Did I blame the wrong man? They say the heart acts like a mirror. We had known each other for over a decade. He must have sensed my sudden freezing distance since I was reborn. It drove him to pure despair. Did this mean I pushed him to his death with my own hands? A deadly chill rushed through me. I sat completely paralyzed, shaking uncontrollably like I was drowning in an icy river. Without warning, I was pulled into a warm, solid embrace. That familiar, crisp cedar scent hit me. It felt like a lifeline in a deadly flood. I grabbed Huaixu's sleeve in a death grip, sobbing until I couldn't breathe. It was me. I killed him. He locked me firmly in his arms. I am right here. Do not be afraid. I don't know. I don't know what to do anymore. I broke down completely. I hugged him back desperately, rambling incoherently into his chest. I am sorry. I am so sorry. He stroked my tangled hair with pure gentleness. He is not dead. Stop crying. He lowered his head, pressing his lips softly against my ear. His voice was incredibly tender. The guards already laid out layers of thick mats and nets at the bottom. They caught him perfectly. I kept my eyes squeezed shut. Huge boiling tears soaked right through his black martial robes. A second later, the dam broke entirely. I wailed out loud. When a living, breathing soul actually dies because of your words, the crushing guilt is enough to break your spine. Huaixu's voice carried a heavily guarded, bitter edge. We saved him. It is just some minor scrapes. They are taking him to the capital's largest clinic tonight. If you want to visit him, I will have them ready the horses right now. No. My voice was brutally raw. I shook my head fiercely. I want to stay right here with you. All right. We climbed back into the carriage. Outside the curtains, the city guards were packing up and retreating in waves. Soon, the clinic apprentices would carry Song Yen away for treatment. He truly had no family left in this world. I leaned against his broad shoulder, completely drained of energy. Before we came to the academy, there was one last thing I didn't get to tell you. I suspect Song Yen was involved in that apocalyptic fire. Huaixu took a slow breath of the cool night air. Ning. What if he was not involved? If he was entirely innocent, would you choose him or would you choose me? It wasn't until he asked that question, with such fragile, agonizing caution, that I finally truly let out a long sigh of relief. Huaixu had always bitterly accepted that he was never the chosen one. But since my rebirth, I walked toward him every single time. Without hesitation. I tilted my head up, staring at him with absolute sincerity. Do you remember when Song Yen first entered the capital's music guild? When he first took the stage? Yes. You and I hadn't even met back then. But the truth is, I had already cut all ties with him long before that. My feelings for Song Yen were complicated. We survived together. We suffered through years of abuse, stumbling blindly into this cannibalistic world. Compared to that bond, any romantic love between a man and a woman was practically non-existent. I counted on my fingers, laying it all out for him. He joined the guild. He performed. His fame exploded. By the time my second uncle forced me to marry you, Song Yen and I had already severed ties. It had been over a year. I admit, I despised you at first. I took a breath. I hated you just like I hated my cold-blooded uncle. I hated anyone who forced their way into my life against my will. But then, right around that time, Song Yan's horses spooked on his way to a royal banquet. His carriage plummeted off a cliff. And the driver, by pure coincidence, belonged to your estate. I jumped to conclusions. I assumed you were exactly like my uncle. A ruthless, bloodthirsty politician who treated human lives like dirt. I didn't resent you because I loved him. I never loved Song Yan. I just couldn't stomach that kind of brutal abuse of power. Destroying someone's entire future on a whim. Huaixu gently wrapped his large hand around my fingers. I am sorry. I acted recklessly. I failed to consider all the angles. No. I hugged his arm tight. I found out the truth. My uncle orchestrated the entire thing. You did nothing wrong. If anyone dares to frame you or insult you again, I will tear them apart. He fell into a long silence. His voice came out slightly hoarse. Thank you. What are you thanking me for? In 2 lifetimes, this is the very first time someone has fiercely and unreasonably defended me. A bitter wave of guilt crashed over my heart. Huaixu's parents died young. His extended family was cold and distant. In the royal court, no one ever spoke of his origins. He truly was an isolated official. A man who had survived his entire life without a single protector. His profound eyes locked onto mine. Ning, can you tell me? When exactly did you fall for me? The night was pitch black, but I could clearly see the desperate, flickering hope in his eyes. There was this one time. You drank too much at a banquet. You stumbled home drunk and accidentally kicked the velvet collar I was sewing for the courtyard puppy. The Grand Chancellor, sitting cross-legged on the cold brick floor in the middle of the night, utterly stripped of his image. You held it under the candlelight, clumsily trying to figure out how to rethread the needle. I told you to go to bed, but you just mumbled that without its collar, the puppy would freeze in the dead of winter. That was when I knew. A man who cared so deeply about a freezing animal had to have an incredibly soft heart. He could never be vicious enough to murder an innocent man. There was another secret I kept to myself. Drunk and dreaming that night, Huaixu had whispered into the dark. Ning, I feel so cold too. I had gotten up to pour some tea and heard him perfectly. My frozen heart shattered in that exact second. This untouchable, supreme chancellor was painfully pitiful. He stood entirely alone at the absolute peak of power, without a single soul who truly loved him. Huaixu listened with intense fascination. The corner of his lips curled up. We will have a dog in the estate? Yes. On my birthday 7 years from now, you picked one out for me yourself. You said you were always buried in official duties and couldn't visit my courtyard often, so the puppy could keep me company in your place. I laughed, counting the years on my fingers. By that math, our puppy is probably still an old street dog somewhere right now, waiting to die and reincarnate. That little dog was so smart. It learned every trick instantly. Sometimes I suspected it managed to dodge the potion of forgetfulness in the underworld. I stopped dead. It felt like invisible hands had suddenly clamped around my throat. Huaixu froze. What is it? All color drained from my face. I grabbed his hand in a death grip. My voice trembled violently. Song Yan. He might be just like me. Just like you how? On the library roof. I whipped my head to look at him, my brows locked together. Right before he jumped, Song Yan said he hadn't heard me sing his birthday lullaby in years. But I just celebrated his birthday at the pavilion last year. Huaixu's sharp eyes narrowed dangerously. He pieced the puzzle together instantly. You mean to say in your past life there were several years where you... Exactly. My blood rushed straight to my head. A terrifying chill shot down my spine. If he suffered and waited years to hear that lullaby again, there is only one explanation. He came back with memories of his past life too. We stared at each other in absolute shock. Deep, suffocating dread mirrored in both our eyes. To the clinic. Half an hour later, the clinic's senior physician delivered the news. A group of mysterious men had already taken Song Yan away. When we pressed for details, the old doctor slammed the door in our faces, citing patient confidentiality. Everything was drenched in suspicion. It was impossible to believe Song Yan had nothing to do with the inferno that burned me alive. In the carriage heading home, my mind raced. One glaring question haunted me. Do you think his jump tonight was calculated? Huaixu held the reins. His long fingers tapped casually against the carriage's sandalwood armrest. His voice was deep. Logically speaking, that tower wasn't high enough to guarantee death. The guards were bound to set up thick mats and nets below. If it were me, I would only take that plunge if I had absolute certainty I would survive. I stared thoughtfully at his sharp profile in the dim light. Oh? Then tell me, what was the point of his little flesh wound strategy? A faint icy scoff slipped from his nose. He just wanted to trick you into pitying him, to tip the scales of your heart in his favor. In 2 lifetimes, this was the very first time Huaixu had ever spoken with such blatant, bitter jealousy in front of me. I fought hard to suppress a massive grin. I nodded with absolute solemnity. Ah, the Grand Chancellor truly is an expert in these matters. His face didn't change at all. He threw back a dry response. Men naturally understand the filthy thoughts of other men. I didn't expose his awkward jealousy. Instead, I turned to watch the streets blur past the window, lost in thought. Since I had exposed Song Yan's true colors to Huaixu 10 years in advance, giving him time to prepare, things couldn't possibly end worse than my past life. My mind flashed back to the inferno. I saw Huaixu charging into the flames like a madman, shielding me with his own body without a second thought. A sharp ache pierced my chest. Faced with a love that deep, who could truly remain a stone? When someone hands you their naked heart and treats you with pure devotion, one day, you will finally see it. After all the chaos on the main street, the night was pitch black by the time our carriage returned to the estate. Maid Lu had already retired for the night. The main courtyard's bedroom was completely unlit, drowned in darkness. Huaixu reached for the fire starter. I lunged at him like a starving tiger. I shoved him hard onto the soft couch by the window. His long, straight legs were forced apart against the edge, securely catching my falling weight. His crisp, black martial outfit was thoroughly rumpled under my grip. His Adam's apple bobbed. His voice was hoarse. "What are you doing now, Huaixu?" I pressed myself tightly against his ear. My warm breath brushed his skin as I whispered 3 incredibly soft words. "I love you." Those 3 weightless words completely shattered his breathing. His prominent Adam's apple swallowed hard. His large palms instinctively clamped around my narrow waist, terrified I might slip and fall off the couch. "Get off." He gritted his teeth, issuing a fierce command that sounded dangerously close to panic. I blinked my teary eyes in fake shock. "No way. The Grand Chancellor is actually—" "Shut up." He immediately threw a hand over my eyes. He delivered a cold, undeniable scolding. "And do not look at me." My vision plunged into warm darkness. I blinked restlessly. My thick eyelashes brushed against the thin calluses on his hot palm like soft feathers. Who could have predicted it? A delayed declaration of love possessed such lethal, devastating power. It completely dismantled the Supreme Chancellor. A man who wouldn't flinch if a mountain collapsed in front of him. A sly smile curled on my lips. I threw caution to the wind and kept chanting in a sweet, breathy voice. "I love you. I really love you." Those soft, whispering words were like barbed feathers, endlessly scratching at his dead, withered heart. A single spark ignited into a raging wildfire. I pressed both hands against his solid chest. Even through the fabric, I felt his heart hammering violently against my palms. I pushed my luck, softening my voice to an impossibly sweet whine. "Husband. I low." A split second later, his feverish lips crashed down, swallowing the rest of my words entirely. This time he unleashed an unprecedented dominant force. His arms locked around me like iron clamps, pinning me flawlessly against the corner of the couch. He allowed zero resistance, forcing me to bear the scorching, desperate passion he had suppressed for years. Those large hands, hands used to commanding the empire and stamping absolute power, now treated me like the world's most fragile, priceless treasure. They traced my cheek and slipped down my slender neck, before finally, gently, and firmly cradling the back of my head. He kissed me with pure obsession, refusing to let go. Always so stubborn. He broke the kiss, letting out a helpless, doting sigh. "You fought me half the night. Are you not hungry?" "Of course I am." I clung to his broad back like a koala. My slender fingers slipped like a snake into his half-open robes. "If I am hungry," I purred, "then I must eat." Seeing him still fighting desperately to hold back, I gritted my teeth and threw caution to the wind. "Well? Has the Grand Chancellor thought of a name for our baby yet?" His deep, bottomless eyes darkened instantly. A hidden fire roared to life. He stopped hesitating. He scooped me up into his arms, completely bypassing the dining table, and strode straight into the inner bedroom. As we passed the outer hall, the mouth-watering scent of roasted pheasant caught my nose. I peeked over his arm, my eyes lighting up like stars. Wait. Husband, hold on." Maid Lu left me warm roasted pheasant." "Forget about it." For the first time in 2 lifetimes, Huaixu ruthlessly rejected my craving. "I gave you a chance to eat. You missed it. Now it is not up to you." I suddenly realized the Supreme Chancellor definitely possessed an iron fist. In fact, he was completely tyrannical and unreasonable. His hoarse, intoxicating voice whispered endlessly into the deep night. He dragged me under, tossing me around like a lone boat in a violent storm. His scorching, fragmented kisses traced every inch of my fingers with absolute devotion. Finally, he completely shattered me, melting me right into his heart. Ning! My entire being and this very life all belong to you. Completely bewitched by this breathtaking, untouchable lord, I let out a soft whine. I violently flipped us over, pinning him hard beneath me. Mine. Everything is mine. Later, after we bathed, I was so exhausted my eyelids glued themselves together. Even so, as he pulled me into his arms, my restless hands wandered all over his sculpted chest, taking full advantage of him. He acted like a massive, tamed hound. He let me do whatever I wanted, entirely incapable of getting angry with me. Ning. I hummed, completely exhausted. My voice came out thick and sweet. Right after we married, you promised to go to the theater with me. The next day you claimed your stomach hurt, canceled everything and went to the clinic. That day, did you go see him? To me, that was an incredibly ancient memory from a past life. I frowned, searching my brain. That had absolutely nothing to do with Song Yan. The day before, Huaixu had sent someone to buy my favorite sweet cream pastries. I had greedily eaten them right after some spicy braised chicken claws. The mix of hot, cold, sweet, and spicy completely destroyed my stomach. I went to the clinic, got acupuncture from the old doctor, forced down a bowl of bitter medicine, and went home to rest. But hearing Huaixu's fragile, probing tone, something felt terribly wrong. My sleepiness vanished instantly. I shot up into a sitting position. A flash of shock crossed Huaixu's face. Then he lowered his eyes. I am sorry, he said bleakly. I overthought it. Do not rush to apologize. I am not mad. I crossed my legs boldly. I am just extremely curious. Why would you blindly assume I went to secretly meet Song Yan that day? Logically, with his absolute control over the shadow guards, tracking my movements was child's play. He should have easily known I was lying half dead in the clinic, drinking bitter medicine. But he never checked. After a brief, agonizing silence, Huaixu finally confessed everything. My spies in the medical pavilion intercepted Song Yan's daily private journal. He has never been the type to write down daily trivia. In the dark our eyes met. We both saw a heavy, terrifying suspicion in each other's gaze. Huaixu reached into the hidden compartment beneath his pillow, pulled out a small booklet and handed it to me. I frantically flipped open the copied journal. The second I read the ink, a deafening explosion went off in my head. 9th of the 8th month. Today, Ning promised to visit the pavilion to celebrate my birthday. To have such a beauty, it is the blessing of my life. 1st of the 8th month. Tasted the herbal soup Ning brewed herself. It still holds that familiar taste from our youth. My fingers turned icy. I frantically flipped back, until I hit an entry from half a year ago. The capital's largest theater has a new grand play today. Everything is ready, just waiting for Ning to arrive. That exact date was the day I was bedridden with my stomach illness. But the truth was every report I received about Song Yan claimed he was completely locked away, suffering and recovering in isolation. All this deep affection in the journal was an absolute setup. It was deliberately leaked just for Huaixu's shadow guards to find. The reality was, since I was forced to marry the Chancellor, I rarely had any private contact with Song Yan. The most I ever did was send some silver when his doctors reported a shortage of funds or needed rare herbs. I treated him generously, like an old friend who had suffered greatly. Instead, he hid in the dark, repeatedly using these filthy tricks to destroy my marriage. Veins bulged on my forehead from pure rage. You actually believe these cheap, pathetic lies? Throughout this entire journal, there wasn't a single piece of evidence. Not a token, not a single strand of my hair. Huaixu lowered his eyes, staring fixedly at my sheer disbelief. Inside his usually dead, silent eyes, something was slowly coming back to life. Ning! I didn't dare not to believe it. His long fingers mindlessly rubbed the journal over and over, desperate to confirm the truth. He looked like a man hopelessly lost in the dark who suddenly saw the dawn. I was terrified that if I sent the guards to dig deeper, They would bring back a report of you sitting beside him in that theater. If that was true, I would rather stay a blind fool in the dark. I was completely furious, but my heart ached so much tears spilled from my eyes. Couldn't you have just asked me to my face? The words caught in my throat. Right. Back then, how could he possibly ask me? Blinded by my uncle back then, I treated him like absolute garbage. I weaponized my words to destroy him. If he had actually asked, my vicious answer would have ripped him apart 1,000 times worse than his own silent paranoia. I was completely wrong. Crushed by guilt, I buried my face into Huaixu's warm chest. My eyes burned. I am sorry. I will never throw another tantrum at you again. His chest vibrated. A hoarse, intoxicating laugh slipped out. His lips brushed gently against my ear. It is fine. I absolutely love it when you throw your little temper tantrums. You look so alive. Just never say, I do not want you anymore. Those words cut too deep. That night, with the insects chirping outside the window, the final layer of ice that had separated us across 2 lifetimes completely melted away. I deeply suspected Huaixu had a masochistic streak in his bones. If he didn't hear my sarcastic mocking for a day, he felt physically uncomfortable. One morning right after the start of autumn, I finally lost my mind. Huaixu, are you determined to work yourself to death in the Chancellor's office, just so I can beg the Emperor for a memorial plaque? I sent a runner to his office. The servant brought back his reply. The Chancellor had chuckled behind his screen. His voice was thick and hoarse, entirely sick, but he had said, "It is fine. I can hold on." At 2 a.m. last night, a sudden violent fever struck him. His body burned like a furnace. I dragged the estate doctor out of bed in the dead of night to brew fever-reducing medicine. I coaxed, lied, and practically forced the medicine down his throat. I sat by his bed with a copper basin, personally wringing out towels to wipe down his scorching skin. His fever finally broke when the sky turned pale gray. I wrote a light herbal porridge recipe for Maid Lu, ensuring Huaixu had something soft to eat when he woke up. Only then did I curl into his chest and fall fast asleep. But when my eyes snapped open at 10 a.m., the bed was completely empty. The lunatic had gone to the office to work. Maybe the trauma of my past life was haunting me. I was terrified for his safety. I choked down a few bites of breakfast, grabbed the porridge Maid Lu had brewed, and ordered the carriage straight to the Chancellor's office. The guard at the duty room violently flinched when he saw me. He scrambled up to bow. "Madam, His Lordship is currently holding a meeting in the main hall. It is extremely inconvenient for him to receive guests." "That is fine. I will wait right here." I sat down on a mahogany chair in the corridor, completely bored, spinning the jade pendant at my waist. Gradually, I caught the faint sounds of Huaixu confronting someone in the main hall. His tone was razor-sharp, bone-chilling. I had never heard him sound so ruthless. "I gave you an out to surrender yourself. You chose to be entirely blind. Grand Chancellor, you clearly set a trap. You deliberately lured me into making a mistake." Huaixu let out a painfully soft, icy sneer. "So what? This violates every imperial law and principle. There is no reason in your actions. I only deal in power and consequences. I never waste my time reasoning with anyone." I rested my chin on my hand, listening with absolute delight. The guard at the door, however, had turned deathly pale. The heavy crimson doors violently swung open. A furious middle-aged official stormed out. As he stepped down the stairs, our eyes accidentally met. I completely froze. Minister Fong. Was he not the exact same murderer who drenched me in burning oil in my past life? Was Huaixu already secretly purging them? 10 years early. His iron fist was truly terrifying. The guard wiped cold sweat from his forehead. He gathered all his courage and yelled inside, "Your Lordship! Your madam is here to see you." I snapped back to reality. I grabbed the food box and stepped into the main hall. The man I saw was not the ruthless dictator holding the power of life and death. Huaixu sat casually by the south window, wearing pristine white casual robes. He gave me a bright, gentle smile. "I plan to go home at noon to be with you." I slammed the heavy food box onto his sandalwood desk with a loud thud. I sat right across from him. "That man just now. Did I scare you?" His voice was impossibly soft. He smiled apologetically. I am sorry. I will watch my tone next time. That is not it. I nervously twisted my silk handkerchief. That man. He is the one I told you about. The thug who burned me alive. A layer of piercing ice instantly locked over Huaixu's deep eyes. Yet, his expression remained entirely flat. Do not worry, he said simply. Leave him to me. He opened the food box and quietly began to eat. The temperature was perfect. The herbal porridge was still steaming. His noble upbringing was truly carved into his bones. Even eating porridge, his posture was flawless and beautiful to watch. Seeing me staring at him without blinking, his hand paused on the silver spoon. Do you want some? No. I leaned forward, deeply conflicted. Listen. Huaixu put down the spoon. He let out a helpless sigh. Do you want to go to the jewelry pavilion? Or tailor new clothes at the silk shop? Just take my token to the treasury and pull some silver. Or wait until I finish work, and I will personally accompany you. I gritted my teeth. My ears burned bright red. Husband, could you please say a few words to me? Using that freezing, ruthless tone you just used. What did you just say? I covered my face in pure shame. I wanted to crawl right under his desk. Please. I truly, absolutely love that arrogant, vicious look on you. A complete blankness washed over his handsome face. I suddenly remembered a ridiculous, blurry night in the past. I was dizzy and gasping, spouting absolute nonsense to him. Look at me with that exact same disgust you use when looking at ants. Thinking back on it now, it felt like sitting on a bed of nails. Some lethal, shameful words really just slip out when you aren't paying attention. Huaixu swallowed his porridge. Suddenly, a deep, muffled laugh broke from his chest. I gently kicked his black boot under the desk. Stop laughing. Just pretend you never heard those shameful words. How could I ever forget? His eyes were profound and steady as he stared at me. I just realized something today. I can never refuse any of my madam's ridiculous demands. That day, every single official inside and outside the Chancellor's office stared in absolute shock. They watched the Chancellor's wife flee the building, her face as bright red as a ripe persimmon. After entangling for so many years across 2 lifetimes, I had finally tasted the sweet, sticky joy of an ordinary married couple. Huaixu's private study, a place strictly reserved for imperial politics, had been entirely hijacked by me as our personal stage for romance. Every few days, I used his name to send my burnt, homemade pastries to high-ranking ministers. Or I forcefully dragged him into painting the most intimately romantic portraits of us, demanding he write sickeningly sweet love poems in the blank spaces. Huaixu finally couldn't take it anymore. He reminded me with extreme tact. Ning. Actually, your husband still has to face those colleagues in the royal court. The hidden meaning was clear. I had completely destroyed the supreme dignity of the Grand Chancellor. But seeing how much joy it brought me, he just threw his hands up and calmly accepted everyone's teasing. The reply letters from his colleagues always included the exact same jokes. Our Chancellor, the eternal Iron Tree, has finally fallen completely. Lord Huaixu is showing off his wife again. My lord, if you are being held hostage by Madam, please cough twice during tomorrow's morning court. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, deep autumn arrived. Song Yan seemed to have completely evaporated from my world. His pavilion was emptied out. He severed every single tie he had with the capital. Occasionally, driving past the academy and seeing the noisy students leaving, I couldn't stop myself from remembering the past. But a very faint voice in my heart warned me. This would absolutely not end so peacefully. Huaixu's official duties grew increasingly heavy. He left under the stars and returned under the moon. On certain nights, waiting for him with a single lantern in the main courtyard, I would drift back to my past life. He was exactly like this back then, chained by the endless, tangled politics of the royal court. The time he could actually spend chatting with me was pitifully scarce. Madam, it is already 9 at night. Please go to bed early, Maid Lu urged. I sat cross-legged on the Persian carpet, totally abandoning my image. Piles of goods I had ordered today surrounded me. Go rest, Lu. I will wait for him a little longer. Counting carefully, it had been 7 full days since we last saw each other properly. My stubbornness flared up tonight. I absolutely had to wait for him. The late autumn dew was heavy. The weather was turning freezing cold. During the day, I visited the capital's largest tailor shop. I personally picked out a full set of winter clothes for him. A frost-colored fox fur cloak, a fur-lined cloud brocade collar, and a slightly childish pair of rabbit fur hand warmers, designed to perfectly match mine. I was gathering his clothes for the cedar chest. My fingers brushed against a hidden pocket in yesterday's robes. A sealed letter lay inside. I marched straight to him the second he returned. I waved the letter, my voice dripping with exaggerated jealousy. Husband, how bold of you, receiving secret letters behind your wife's back. He was completely used to my dramatic tantrums. He washed his hands, his voice incredibly warm. It is an official file from the Shadow Guards. I forgot to take it out. Open it for me, Ning. I smiled, breaking the wax seal. This better not be a love letter from some desperate noblewoman, I muttered playfully. Or I will tear the roof off this estate tonight. I unrolled the parchment. It was an official coroner's report. I leaned closer to the candle, squinting at the tiny ink strokes. Song Chung Hui. Shattered skull. Severe internal bleeding. I paused, my brow furrowing. Was he crushed by something falling? I kept reading. Oh, here is the final ruling. He died in a tragic accident while supervising the dam construction. How pitiful. Huaixu listened quietly. He stepped closer and wrapped his warm hand around mine. Be good. Put the file back on the desk. It is late. I will have the kitchen bring you those sweet cream pastries you love. You were so generous letting me read it a second ago, I teased. Now you are being stingy. He flipped the parchment face down. He gave me a doting smile. It is just filthy, bloody business. I do not want it to ruin your mood. His midnight soup was still warming in the kitchen. I put the file back. I dragged a large silk box from the inner room. I wanted to pack his new fox fur cloak perfectly to give him a massive surprise. Just 2 days ago, my closest friend Wan had visited for tea. She mercilessly teased me. You used to loathe the Grand Chancellor to death. Ning, were you possessed by a ghost? Did someone swap out your soul? My husband is the best man in the world. I shot back confidently. I was just completely blind before. Am I not allowed to change? Fine, you win, she laughed. But when will you fulfill your promise? When are we opening that jewelry shop on the South Street? Do you have any idea? The casual designs you sketch are worth gold in the capital's noble circles right now. My hand froze mid-pour. I hesitated. Let us wait a little longer. I am entirely free in the estate anyway. I can just send the runners to deliver my sketches to you. Oh, look at you, she mocked. Just throw your entire life at your husband then. I admitted it. I truly desperately wanted to spend more time with him. If I was reborn only to fail again, if we were destined to die together in that roaring inferno no matter what I did, then every single day we had left was a countdown. Huaixu finally stepped into the bedroom well past midnight. Only a single dim silk lantern burned in the outer hall. The warm midnight soup simmered softly in the clay pot, releasing a faint wisp of steam. I hugged my knees, curling up like a cat in the darkest corner of the soft couch. I held my breath. Huaixu parted the beaded curtains. Ning, he called out softly. I stayed dead silent. I crept up behind him like a shadow and launched myself wildly onto his broad back. Meow. His stance was impossibly solid. He let out a helpless sigh, naturally hooking his arms under my knees to secure me. Hold on tight. Do not fall. Why aren't you scared at all? I pouted. I saw your shadow stretching across the display cabinet the second I walked in. I rubbed my cheek lazily against his neck. Take me to the bedroom. I prepared a rare gift for you. He carried me inside. The first thing he saw was the massive, crookedly tied silk box sitting dead center in the room. And what is this? A delayed birthday gift, I announced. I didn't even cook your longevity noodles myself this year. I felt so terribly guilty. Every single coin I spent on this came from my own private savings. I earned it all from selling my jewelry sketches. I slid quickly off his back. I presented the box to him like a priceless treasure. Hurry up and open it. Huaixu lowered his eyes. He stared at the ridiculous, lopsided box for a very long time. His voice was incredibly raw. Ning. Thank you. Open it. His long fingers rested on the silk ribbon, but he didn't pull it. A suffocating silence stretched between us. Finally, he forced the words out. There is an urgent matter. I need to discuss it with you. Just tell me. It looked like 1,000 words were choking his throat. In the end, he only managed one sentence. We need to live separately for a while. I stood entirely frozen for a few seconds. I truly thought I was having a nightmare. As the reality crashed down, my body turned rigid. I stared at him, forcing out every word like crushing ice. You want to give me a divorce letter? You are divorcing me. A violent flash of agony and struggle crossed his deep eyes. He opened his mouth to defend himself, but I had already shot up from the couch. I understand. My voice trembled. I will have made Lu pack my dowry immediately. Ning. Huaixu lunged forward, grabbing my wrist in a death grip. His voice held pure, desperate pleading. Just be patient. Please. Just let me finish. I fought back a violent flood of tears. I kept my back entirely turned to him, terrified he would see how pathetically broken I looked. Just say it like this. I choked out. Even if you do not say it, I know exactly what this is. I shattered your heart. You treated me so wonderfully these past months just to exact your revenge. Just to tear me down completely. When my uncle forced us to marry, I never should have cursed you as a tyrant. I never should have abandoned you at the theater, leaving you freezing in the wind for 2 hours. I knew you were an absolute neat freak. I never should have deliberately smeared that sticky mulberry jam all over your pristine white robes. This is all my own fault. I deserve this. The man behind me suddenly fell into a bizarre dead silence. Where exactly did you smear mulberry jam? On your pure white robes. And all over the silk bedsheets in the bedroom. When exactly was this? Right after our wedding. I was so angry. I just wanted to disgust you and get revenge. The world suddenly spun wildly around me. A second later, he grabbed my waist, forcefully flipping me over. I crashed face down, pinned helplessly across Huaixu's solid thighs. Smack! A sharp, clear slap landed solidly across my backside. It wasn't overly brutal, but it sent a strange tingling jolt straight through me. The tears spinning in my eyes instantly spilled over. I let out a pitiful dramatic wail. What kind of barbaric law is this? I have never heard of a husband beating his wife with family discipline right before divorcing her. Murder. Help me. I barely used a fraction of my strength. Huaixu was so exasperated he actually laughed. His usual icy, untouchable dignity entirely shattered. Ning. How long do you plan to act like a complete child? I thrashed wildly across his lap like a dying fish, refusing to back down. The military texts say it clearly. Destroying the mind is better than destroying the castle. Striking the fatal weakness is the ultimate strategy. You claim to be so flawlessly clean? I deliberately ruined your silk sheets. Even if we divorce, I wanted to disgust you one last time before I left. Smack! Another sharp slap echoed in the room. My skin burned like it was on fire. My cheeks were bright red, practically dripping blood. Huaixu, you are just finding new ways to humiliate me. If you have any real skill, just give me a quick death. If I truly gave you a quick death, I am afraid your fragile little bones wouldn't survive it. He hauled me up effortlessly. His long limbs completely caged me, shutting down my thrashing entirely. He forced his face back into a stern, cold mask. Enough. Stop your tantrums and dry your tears. I am telling you something of absolute life and death. I need you to cooperate with me. We are going to stage a flawless, magnificent play. What kind of play? That coroner's file you read earlier. Song Chenghui. That is Song Yan's biological father. Huaixu stopped hiding it. He laid everything bare. The file claims his father died in a tragic accident while supervising the dam. But that massive imperial dam project years ago, it was a highly lucrative government contract secured jointly by your uncle and my late father. A blinding bolt of lightning struck my brain. Memories of that night on the library tower flooded back. Song Yan had stood alone on the deadly ledge. The howling wind violently whipped his pale robes, making him look like a shattered white sail ready to tear apart. I had clutched a stick of candied hawthorn berries, screaming in absolute panic. Song Yan, Are you insane? What are you doing? He had looked back at me in pure despair. His handsome, elegant face was entirely consumed by an apocalyptic, dead sorrow. My parents are dead. I have no flesh and blood left in this entire world. Back then I was just a naive girl constantly bullied by my cousins. Horrified by the sudden massacre of his family, I bravely inched toward him. I offered him the candied hawthorn. I have no one to rely on either. No family loves me. What about me? Can I be your family? You. Yes. Look, these are the scars from when my cousins locked me in the dark room and beat me. I showed him my arms. My uncle only thinks I am a disgrace who causes trouble. He will never stand up for me. Song Yan slowly lowered his eyes. He stared intensely at the horrifying purple bruises on my forearms. Finally he reached out and took the candy. He stepped down from that deadly ledge. His voice was terrifyingly dark. Your uncle. What is his full name? Sang Ming. Song Yan's dead eyes shifted impossibly slowly. He looked up at me. Sang Ming? The second lord of the Sang clan? The wealthiest family in the capital? That's Sang Ming. Yes. He stared dead into my face. A deeply twisted, sickening frenzy and calculation burned in his eyes, something I was far too young to understand back then. Do not worry, he said slowly. From now on, I will treat you very, very well. Drowning in my old memories, traversing 2 entire lifetimes, I suddenly understood the lethal truth behind that stare. Maybe right before he learned my uncle's name, Song Yan truly did want to treat me as his family. But my blood tie to the Sang clan was the perfect, exact blade he needed to tear open his path of revenge. He spent over a decade teaching me that family never betrays you. And if your family is destroyed, you must exact revenge 1,000 times over in blood. The tragic truth was, his very first vow to me was nothing but a massive, inescapable net woven from absolute lies. Huaixu's voice broke through my thoughts. Ning. I see it clearly. Song Yan truly loves you. You said in your past life Song Yan pushed those thugs to murder you. Perhaps it was exactly because you abandoned him and chose me. I cannot dare to tie you to me any longer. I refuse to gamble with your life against fate. You severed ties with the Sang clan long ago. Song Yan knows this perfectly. If you accept the divorce and leave me, every hidden arrow, every political assassination, every apocalyptic disaster in the court, I will shoulder it entirely alone. I slowly shook my head. Absolutely impossible. Listen to me. No. I stubbornly gripped his large hand tight. I will not divorce you. Do you know? In our past life I was already carrying our child. I never even got the chance to tell you. Huaixu's breathing stopped completely. Truly. Yes. And who knows? Maybe I am already carrying one right now. His towering frame instantly turned to wood. He stared blankly, completely stunned at my stomach. Huaixu. I will gladly stage a play to deceive the entire world with you. But I will absolutely never divorce you. Half a month later, explosive rumors swept through the capital. The Grand Chancellor Huaixu had suffered a massive rift with his wife. He had decisively issued a divorce. That same day, I took my head maid and moved out of the grand estate. My pathetic, abandoned figure became the hottest gossip in every tea house and tavern in the city. My friend Juan was absolutely thrilled when she saw me moving endless crates of my dowry into her private residence. My living god of wealth. Have you finally seen the light? Are you ready to partner with me and run the capital's largest silk shop? Yes, I said, keeping my beautiful face entirely cold. Men are entirely unreliable. Heartless, ungrateful bastards. Hey, wait a minute. Just a few days ago you were chanting husband this and husband that. Tell me everything. What on earth happened? Looking into her sparking, wildly curious eyes, I huffed in fake anger. I smeared sticky mulberry jam all over his precious silk bedsheets. Just because of that? Just because of that. So he divorced me. So what are your plans now? I will build my own estate. I will live my own life. On the third day, a servant from my uncle delivered a message. Ning, return to the estate tomorrow night for a family banquet. Listening to the servant, I casually twirled a pair of golden pruning scissors. I sneered. My, has the sun risen from the west? Why is my uncle suddenly so concerned about an abandoned pawn like me? The servant mimicked Ming's hypocritical tone perfectly. Well, we heard you were thrown out by the Chancellor's estate. We share the Sang bloodline. How could the family just watch you suffer on the streets? Since we are hosting a banquet tomorrow, we can take the opportunity to find you another excellent marriage match. My uncle's spies are certainly efficient. Just tell me, are you attending the banquet or not? I will be there exactly on time. After I dismissed the servant, Juan looked at me with deep worry. Didn't you cut all ties with your ruthless parents long ago? Why are you wading back into the Sang clan's muddy waters? Broken bones are still connected by tendons. Even if I don't go looking for trouble, they are constantly plotting how to crack my bones and suck out the marrow. The next evening I wore a sweeping ink-black gown woven with golden cloud patterns. I stepped through the grand crimson and gold doors of the Sang estate. The main hall was brilliantly lit. High-ranking officials and nobles toasted each other constantly. The second I crossed the threshold, eyes locked onto me like flesh-eating maggots. Women hid behind their silk sleeves, viciously whispering, "Is that the Sang clan's outcast daughter? She usually never even gets a seat at the table." Ha! Her own parents threw her away like trash. Did you really expect any elder to protect her? Why don't you send your useless illegitimate son to test the waters? If he can climb the Sang family ladder through her, he could skip 10 years of hard work. Spit! Shut your filthy, gossiping mouth. I navigated through the perfumed crowd and luxurious robes. Just as I rounded a sandalwood privacy screen, I heard a chilling, terrifyingly familiar voice. It has been a long time. I followed the sound. Huaixu stood dead center in the crowd, holding a white jade wine cup. For once he was actually smiling and chatting easily. He was always the brilliant moon surrounded by adoring stars. The moment news of his divorce broke, countless powerful families swarmed like vultures. They practically wanted to strip their unmarried daughters naked and shove them into his estate. A thick sea of beautiful young women surrounded him, suffocating him in 3 layers of silk and perfume. He must be absolutely drowning in joy right now. The crowd spotted me. The loud, cheerful chatter abruptly died. Grand Chancellor. Perhaps. You should catch up with Miss Sang first. Huaixu slowly raised his eyes. He swept a gaze over me filled with absolute, freezing indifference. Then he looked away. No need. Our paths have permanently separated. I have absolutely nothing to do with her anymore. I casually grabbed a cup of dark western grape wine from a passing mate's tray. I swayed my hips, walking confidently toward him. The surrounding guests smartly parted like the sea, terrified we would tear each other apart right there and drag them into the crossfire. Huaixu's deep, bottomless gaze invisibly traced my soft, crimson lips. After a microsecond pause, his eyes slid down my slender neck, locking onto my tightly corseted, impossibly narrow waist. For a brief second, he completely forgot what ruthless, heartless insult he was supposed to throw next. Seeing him daze out, I lost my patience. With a sharp flick of my wrist, I violently splashed the blood-red wine entirely across his pristine white silk robes. I smiled beautifully like a blooming flower, paying my respects to the Grand Chancellor. His lordship has always been so magnanimous. Surely, you will not punish a commoner for her clumsiness. He casually took the empty jade cup from my hand. His hot fingertips brushed against the back of my hand with a ghost-like, desperate greed. His expression never changed. He gave a faint smile. I do not blame you. I let out a cold sneer. I slammed the jade cup onto a table, whipped my sleeves and spun away. I pushed open the carved lattice doors leading to the rear garden's water pavilion. I desperately needed a breath of cold air. But the secluded pavilion was not empty. A man was already standing there. An incredibly familiar old friend. Songyan. He leaned casually against the white marble railing. The half of his face destroyed by the fire was perfectly hidden in the heavy darkness and tree shadows. Only his flawless, elegantly handsome profile caught the light. Ning. It has been a while. My thick eyelashes trembled invisibly. Hidden safely behind my back inside my wide sleeves, my fingers clenched into a death grip. It has been a while. A soft, low laugh escaped his throat. Why are you acting so distant and polite with me now? I violently suppressed the terror boiling in my chest. I took a deep breath of the freezing night wind. Why would you say that? I haven't even had the chance to ask you. Where exactly did you hide yourself? You cut off all letters. You completely emptied the medical pavilion. Brother Song Yan's wings must have grown strong. You are becoming quite capable. I forced a bright fake smile. Just like our familiar old days, I reached out and playfully shoved his shoulder as a joke. A shadow suddenly blocked the dim candlelight spilling through the pavilion doors. I glanced over in shock. Huaixu leaned casually against the wooden pillar. His cold, profound eyes locked onto us. Song Yan instinctively took half a step back, hiding himself completely in the moonless dark. I found a hidden master physician. I underwent a skin graft. A skin graft. He leaned forward slightly. The faint light reflecting off the water illuminated his face. The skin that had been brutally melted by the hellfire was miraculously restored by 70 or 80%. Though faint red scars remained, the terrifying disfigurement was gone. Look closely, he whispered. Does my face look exactly like it did before the fire? I stared at him, paralyzed. It took a long time to force out a single word. Yes. So between us. A deadly chill seized my heart. I took a sharp step back, putting distance between us. I am happy for you. It truly is a miracle. The heavy carved doors violently swung open. My Uncle Ming led a massive crowd of nobles and officials inside, his face glowing with triumph. Everyone, please, allow me to introduce you all. Ming announced loudly. This is my niece, Ning. And this brilliant young man beside her is the Sang clan's newest ally, young Master Song Yan. They grew up together. Childhood sweethearts. I hosted this banquet tonight to bless these two suffering children and arrange their beautiful marriage. The crowd surged forward. The opportunistic nobles immediately clapped and laughed, showering us with endless congratulations. They completely blocked the only exit to the narrow pavilion, trapping Song Yan and me in the corner. I frowned deeply. Uncle, I just received my divorce papers. I have no intentions of. Song Yan smoothly wrapped his arm around my fragile shoulders, pulling me in tight. He gave Ming a bright, ringing laugh. Uncle, put your heart at ease. From now on I will protect Ning with my life. I will treat her like my greatest treasure. I struggled secretly, trying to pull away. I realized with absolute horror that his fingers were digging into my shoulder with terrifying, crushing force. Panic flooded my chest. Thankfully, the suffocating grip only lasted a few minutes. He let me go, turning smoothly to toast and mingle with the old political foxes. My mind was a chaotic mess. When Song Yan finally finished his rounds and turned back to me, I gritted my teeth and whispered furiously. When exactly did you team up with my ruthless uncle? Song Yan slowly smoothed out the dark embroidery on his sleeves. He lowered his voice. I need the Sang clan's official marriage documents to legitimately carry you through the front doors of my estate. I originally prepared much darker, messier plans. But your divorce from Huaixu truly saved me a massive amount of trouble. I stared dead into his face. He felt entirely foreign. He was a complete, terrifying stranger. Song Yan let out a low laugh. Why are you looking at me like that? Don't you recognize me? Do you feel like the man standing in front of you is a completely different person than the Song Yan you hold in your heart? In the past, I thought Song Yan's smile was like the warm spring sun. I thought he was the only soul in this filthy world who shared my pain. Looking at him now, I realized I was devastatingly wrong. He stepped forward, forcing me back until I had nowhere left to go. My spine crashed hard against the freezing glass doors. Ning! Beneath my skin. This is exactly who I have always been. He forced a stiff, twisted smile. In the flickering, ghastly lantern light, he looked incredibly sinister. Originally, I never planned to leave a single living soul in the Sang family. You were supposed to die with them. But my heart couldn't control its obsession with you. Just be good. Come back to me and we can be as close as we were in our youth. You are so incredibly smart. You don't want to repeat your past mistakes, do you? You don't want to burn to a crisp and die with Huaixu again. Violent shudders wrecked my body. I plummeted straight into a bottomless abyss of pure terror. He knew. He knew absolutely everything. Song Yan easily caught my dilated pupils and chaotic, heavy breathing. He leaned in, his breath brushing my ear. His large hand dropped to the latch behind my back. With a soft click, the heavy carved doors swung open. The decadent, blaring music from the main hall flooded the pavilion. Blinding brilliant light poured in, burning my eyes. Song Yin took half a step back. The gentle, flawless mask snapped right back onto his face. With his back to the light, he mouthed silently, "Go back to the banquet. Enjoy your uncle's feast. We have plenty of time. We will catch up another day." I stumbled blindly back into the roaring crowd. Only then did I realize cold sweat had completely soaked through my inner robes. The blinding crystal lantern spun around me. I grabbed the sandalwood handrail, relying on faded childhood memories to drag my exhausted body up to the second floor. At the end of the long corridor was my old, abandoned bedroom. I just needed a quiet, empty room to calm my violently racing heart. The exact second I pushed the door open, a large hand clamped tightly over my mouth. A brutal, undeniable force dragged me violently into the pitch-black darkness behind the door. That familiar, freezing scent of pine and cedar engulfed me instantly. Huaixu's lethally deep voice poured straight into my ear, carrying the heavy, intoxicating scent of rich wine. "Where exactly did that animal touch you?" Every ounce of strength drained from my bones. I collapsed softly against Huaixu's broad, burning chest. My body wouldn't stop shaking. "Right shoulder." The moment the words left my lips, a feverish, scorching kiss branded the right side of my neck like a hot iron. He sucked and bit relentlessly. Huaixu didn't say a single word. With a sick, obsessive patience, he systematically eradicated every trace of Song Yan's touch. He bit down hard, leaving a bloody mark that belonged entirely to him. Finally, as if punishing me, he found my freezing lips and devoured them completely. Under his furious, dominant protection, the suffocating terror that had nearly drowned me slowly receded like the tide. Deep in the pitch-black room, I tangled desperately with the most powerful man in the empire. A long time passed before he finally reluctantly pulled back. My face was burning hot. I leaned against his racing heart and whispered softly, "Is the Grand Chancellor jealous?" "Jealous? I am drinking deadly poison," Huaixu growled, his voice dark and terrifying. "No other man is allowed to touch a single finger of yours. Not even God himself." He lunged forward, ready to bite down viciously on my clean neck again. "Stop!" I panicked, shoving his heavy head away. "I have to go back downstairs and face the crowd. If they see bite marks on my neck, what will they think? They will say I just got my divorce papers and shamelessly slept with Song Yan. Do you really want to hear those filthy rumors tearing us apart?" He fell into a long, suffocating silence. Finally, he gave a bitter, unwilling surrender. "No." "Then control your fire." I pressed my cheek back against his warm chest, listening to the strong, steady beat of his heart. My voice turned dead serious. "Song Yan teamed up with my uncle. He knows about my rebirth. He is definitely prepared for the traps you set. Are you absolutely certain you can win?" "Ning." "Yes. If the Sang family is completely annihilated in this political bloodbath, if your entire clan falls, what will you do?" So that was it. He was hesitating because he worried about my blood ties. I grabbed his large hand and spoke with absolute clarity. My parents' marriage was a political transaction. They hated each other. The year I was born, they tossed me to my uncle like garbage. They left the capital and never cared if I lived or died. My uncle only ever saw me as a pawn to buy power. If you hadn't forced him to marry me to you, he would have tied me up and shipped me off to be the concubine of some dying, corrupt 80-year-old official. So, whatever you do, do not hold back because of me. I gently traced the knuckles of his ring finger. A surge of warmth hit my heart. Without me noticing, he had quietly slipped our white jade wedding ring back onto his hand. If the Sang family's rotten tree is ripped out by the roots, it is exactly what my uncle deserves. He is drenched in sins. Death is too good for him. For the next few months, I went back to making a living by drawing embroidery patterns. Ever since I came of age, I hadn't taken a single copper coin from the Sang family. I survived by waking up at dawn and drawing until midnight for the silk shops. Aside from my uncle occasionally sending thugs to drag me to forced meetings with Song Yan, my life was relatively peaceful. One was furious about it. "You already sent the Sang family a letter severing all ties. Why do you still listen to him?" I didn't argue. Song Yan held my ultimate weakness. If I rebelled even slightly, he would order my uncle to sabotage Huaixu in the royal court. Until Huaixu completely destroyed them, I had to keep the situation stable. Besides, Song Yan let me pick the meeting spots. I always chose loud, crowded tea houses in broad daylight. It was safe enough. One loved listening to street gossip. Lately, Huaixu's name constantly appeared in government bulletins and the mouths of storytellers. Every time she heard it, she cursed him out. He is a beast in human clothing. Ning, if you ever remarry, I must inspect the new husband first. She held a clay teacup, shaking with sheer rage. She pointed at Huaixu's name on the bulletin, her voice cracking. A deep, scheming politician like him is never a good man. If I have to watch you put on a wedding dress and marry back into his estate, I will eat dirt while doing a handstand. I looked up from a messy pile of embroidery sketches, wincing. You shouldn't make absolute vows like that. Leave yourself an out. Fine. When the time comes, I'll drag you down and we'll eat dirt together. Because of Wan's fierce interference, I had to sneak around like a thief just to see Huaixu. Deep winter arrived. A heavy snowstorm had just passed. Wrapped in a thick padded jacket, carrying a bundled package, I peeked out from the courtyard side door. Huaixu's low-profile sandalwood carriage was parked deep in the alley. Despite the freezing cold, he stood right in the wind, waiting for me. He was wearing the frost-colored fox fur cloak I bought him, and the white velvet collar I sewed wrapped around his neck. Come here. He smiled and waved. I crunched through the snow, bouncing toward him, and threw myself into his arms like a bird returning to the nest. I pressed a finger to my lips. Shoo, be quiet. Let's talk in the carriage. What is wrong? One firmly believes you are a heartless, ungrateful bastard right now. Feeling completely guilty, I dragged him onto the carriage. The heavy curtains dropped, plunging us into darkness. The only light came from the windproof lanterns at the end of the alley, casting flickering shadows on the snow. I pulled my cloak tight, dug around in my chest, and pulled out a pair of fluffy rabbit fur hand warmers. For you. Huaixu's eyes crinkled with a smile. He took the gift with absolute solemnity. Madam, I already have many of these in the treasury. You don't like them? I frowned, reaching out to snatch them back. He moved lightning fast, shoving them deep inside his coat. Thank you. I love them. Honestly, we had zero common ground when it came to poetry or art, but we always had endless things to whisper about. I leaned lazily against his broad shoulder, rubbing my cheek against him. One said, if I ever remarry you, she will. She will what? The exact words were too vulgar to repeat. I mumbled vaguely. She will do something incredibly disgusting. I sighed. I can already see her chasing me around the courtyard with a feather duster. Huaixu let out a muffled laugh, grabbing my hand and holding it tight. Then what if you choose another good man? Huaixu. I puffed my cheeks and shoved his chest. What kind of crazy nonsense are you saying? His long eyelashes dropped. He silently gathered both my freezing hands and folded them into his burning palms. His hands were beautiful, sculpted like jade, and large enough to completely cage mine. I just want to grow old with you, I mumbled. My forced cheerfulness vanished instantly. I didn't know which god I had offended lately, but nightmares haunted me every single night. Every time I dreamed of Huaixu pushing me away, leaving me to survive alone in this world. I always woke up with eyes swollen like walnuts. Ning. I am just saying, what if? He paused, his voice tightening. What if one day we are suddenly separated by death? Before he could finish, a heavy tear dropped right onto the back of his hand, severing the cursed words. A helpless, heavy sigh fell from above. Huaixu crushed me into his arms, his large hand stroking my hair. It was just a joke. Even as a joke, it tears my heart out. I cried, my voice thick. I am stubborn. I never knew my parents' love, so whoever showed me a sliver of kindness, I clung to them. I did it with Song Yan and I did it with you at first. But everything changed. When you like someone, you smile for them and cry for them. But my feelings for you go way beyond that. I only think about making you happy. When I see something rare, I instantly want my husband to have it too. I watch every word I say, terrified of cutting you like a knife. Every joy and sorrow in my life is permanently welded to your fate. So if you talk about leaving, you are carving out my heart. It hurts so much I can't breathe. Huaixu pressed his soft lips against my temple, letting out a deeply satisfied sigh. Ning, you truly have fallen deeply in love with me. Then don't ever leave me. Promise me. You gave your word. You would never refuse anything I asked. A low hum rumbled in his throat. He patted my back gently like coaxing a child. All right. In life and death we will never part. The next morning I walked out of my room with eyes swollen like massive walnuts. One had a freshly baked mutton pie hanging from her mouth. Were you hiding under the covers crying pearls again last night? Yes. Please go find me a cold towel. She rolled her eyes, walked to the kitchen, wrung out a freezing towel from the icebox, and slapped it ruthlessly over my eyes. Last night I peeked through the window cracks. I saw you crawl right into a luxury sandalwood carriage. I held the cold towel over my eyes, fighting a losing battle of silence. She poked my forehead furiously. Great. A good horse turns back to eat old grass. What, did that ex-husband humiliate you again? Cry, cry, cry. Crying over a wild man all day. Look how pathetic you are. It isn't like that. He treats me very well. Stop right there. She dramatically cleaned out her ear. If I hear you say one more soft word about that heartless bastard, I am throwing you out on the street. I knew arguing was useless. I shut my mouth, picked up a porcelain bowl, and took a massive gulp of warm almond milk. I puffed my cheeks out like a hoarding hamster, staring blankly at her. She glared at me. Swallow it. Has your soul run off with that man? Do I have to teach you how to eat now? I violently sprayed the almond milk everywhere. Before she could explode, I clamped a hand over my mouth, stumbled wildly to the spittoon in the washroom, and hunched over, dry heaving violently. Covered in white milk splatters, she cursed me out while handing me a cup of clear tea and rubbing my back. My little ancestor, what kind of play are you putting on now? Don't scare me. I'm sending someone for the doctor right now. I grabbed her sleeve in a death grip. Don't. Hey, let go. Do you have any idea how pale you look? You look like a ghost. I pulled her with everything I had left. I'm pregnant, I gasped weakly. What kind of nonsense? Her cursing stopped instantly. Her eyes went perfectly round like she had just swallowed a whole egg. It took her forever to choke out a deeply unladylike curse. Oh my God. 30 minutes later, she forcefully dragged me into a hired carriage. Song Yan's servant arrived with an urgent message. Ning, where are you right now? I snapped out of my daze. I had agreed to another fake meeting with him today. I am sorry. I have an absolute emergency. Where are you? Tell me your exact location. One knew exactly how much I despised Song Yan. She snatched the token right out of the servant's hand and coldly drove him away. A massive event like this, and you didn't say a single word. You didn't even tell the father. Fine, Ning. You are truly something. Dodging the spy gave me a moment of peace. I let out a weak sigh and begged her. Please keep this a secret. Absolutely do not let your family elders know. I am terrified my uncle will hear about it. She was fuming, turning her face away to ignore me. After a long while her voice softened. So you're just going to give birth without a name or a title? Yes. Fine. You just give birth. I will be this little bastard's aunt. Women can hold up the sky too. You think we can't afford to feed one more mouth? Outside the carriage, the loud gossip of storytellers and street merchants drifted in. We perked our ears and listened. Both of us fell completely silent. A massive disaster had struck the Sang clan. The imperial edict had just been posted this morning. Years ago, during the construction of the Imperial Tombs Dam, the Sang family cut corners and embezzled funds, causing a collapse that killed dozens of workers. The Huaixu estate, which acted as joint supervisors, was also impeached and dragged down by the censors. One grabbed my hand tight, her eyes filled with deep worry. I shook my head slightly. It is fine. I never expected Huaixu to move so fast. His iron fist was lightning quick. All the other corrupt crimes of the Sang family were exposed one after another, piling up like massive boulders on a camel's back. The final straw had fallen. The century-old noble house was collapsing. Remembering my past life, How my uncle manipulated Minister Fong into starting that apocalyptic fire. My heart, which had been hanging by a thread, finally settled safely in my chest. Reborn, I had seized a full 10 years of advantage. Huaixu's power in the cabinet was absolute. My uncle's secret factions hadn't grown strong enough to blot out the sun. The tragedy of burning alive wouldn't happen again, right? The official roads were empty today. The driver kept the carriage steady. Halfway there, my eyelids felt like they were dragged down by heavy iron. I was exhausted. I leaned my head on Juan's shoulder to sleep. Wake me up when we reach the clinic. Before I heard her answer, my vision went completely black. I plummeted into total darkness. I had no idea how much time had passed. A furious, distant voice drifted into my ears. Ning! Open your eyes right now. The horrific scraping sound of rusty chains violently ripped me from my stupor. My limbs felt like lead, utterly useless. I slowly forced my heavy eyelids open. Thick, ruined stone pillars surrounded me. One was tied backward to one of them. Freezing wind howled through the hall. A sickening, blinding stench of explosive oil and rotting wood hit my face. Panic exploded in my eyes. I struggled up from the debris-covered floor. One was kicking her legs wildly, hopelessly Song yanking at the chains. The metal screeched. Thank God. You're finally awake. Come untie this damn rope. Every alarm in my brain went off. We had been kidnapped and dragged to the wilderness. I stumbled forward, dropping to my knees to tear at the rough, agonizing hemp rope. In a flash of lightning, a horrific bloody memory flooded my mind. I whipped my head around, staring at the shattered, ruined walls. A freezing wave crashed over me. Cold sweat poured down my spine. This place. This was the exact same ruined temple where I was burned alive into ash in my past life. The ropes were tied in vicious dead knots. Impossible to undo by hand. I had to find a sharp rock to grind them down. The sound of hemp scraping against the stone pillar echoed through the dead temple. It was terrifying. One gasped in pain, cursing loudly. They actually dared to kidnap me. These thugs are tired of living. I ground the rope forever, but it wouldn't break. Exhausted, she slumped against the freezing stone. She gasped for air. Ning! Stop wasting your energy. They tied me up securely, but left you free to walk around. It's obvious. They're using me as leverage to extort the Yu clan. The guards aren't looking. Run away right now. Go straight to the capital magistrate and sound the drum. I let out a broken, miserable laugh. Absolute despair filled my eyes. I am sorry. I brought this disaster on you. I dragged you into my hell. What the hell are you talking about? Before she finished, a cold, venomous voice slithered out from the shadows behind me. Your good sister is truly too loud and annoying. One tried to lean over to see his face. I panicked, slamming my hand over her eyes. I whipped around like a fierce mother beast protecting her young, glaring dead at Song Yan. She is an outsider. She knows nothing. Let her live. Wan's explosive temper ignited instantly. She screamed curses. You filthy scum. Listen to me clearly. I am the legitimate daughter of the mighty Yu clan. If my grandfather finds out you kidnapped me, he will slice you into 1,000 pieces and grind your bones to dust. Song Yan's sickly pale face turned even darker and more sinister. I yelled sharply. You heard her. This is between our two families. There is absolutely no reason to drag the innocent Yu family into the grave. Wan's ancestors had been powerful imperial officials for 3 generations. Her biological brother was the commander of the Imperial Guards. She had never been afraid of anything in her life. If she actually died here today because of me, I would have no face to meet her in the afterlife. Song Yan sneered. He pulled a gleaming poison dagger from his sleeve and threw it at my feet. Use it to cut her loose. As for you, do not move a single step. If you dare to run, no one leaves this broken temple alive today. I dove forward, grabbed the dagger, and violently slashed the thick hemp ropes. I freed one completely. Do not look back. Do not look at him. Run straight home and lock your doors. One rubbed the deep purple bruises on her wrists. She lowered her voice suspiciously. Is this a trick? If I get out, I swear I will trample the magistrate's office to save you. Go sound the drum, I whispered bitterly. But I fear this beast is backed into a corner. He doesn't even fear the death penalty anymore. The apocalyptic fire flashed through my mind again. I shoved one hard. Someone had to survive today. She gripped my thin shoulders tight, her eyes completely red. Ning! You have to hold on. I am going to find my brother and bring the Imperial Guards to save you. She gritted her teeth, turned, and vanished into the pitch-black wilderness without looking back. The massive ruined hall was suddenly empty. Only Song Yan and I remained. I leaned against the shattered altar and stood up straight. I stared fearlessly into his venomous snake-like eyes. You went through all this trouble to set this trap. What exactly do you want? When you went behind my back to the clinic that day, what were you really doing? He asked coldly. My stomach hurt. I went to get calming medicine. A sickeningly sarcastic sneer twisted Song Yan's pale lips. Ning! Do you truly think I am a brainless idiot you can just fool around with? He struck violently. His hand clamped around my wrist like iron claws. He dragged me brutally across the floor to a shattered, rotting wooden window. He grabbed my jaw fiercely, forcing me to look outside the ruined temple. Open your eyes and look. Look who came to join us in hell. In the clearing outside, Huaixu stood tall and straight. My ruthless uncle had a poisoned heavy crossbow aimed dead at his heart. The second I saw him, my heart plummeted into ice. The pain was suffocating. Song Yan let out a spine-chilling laugh right by my ear. When the royal guards arrive, all they will find is Huaixu's stiff corpse. As for your uncle, he won't escape either. He will perfectly take the fall for assassinating a court official. My heart hammered like war drums. My fingers turned as cold as frost, trembling uncontrollably. But I knew. If I showed even a single drop of pain or care right now, Huaixu's danger would multiply. I hardened my heart. I squeezed my eyes shut and spoke with absolute cruelty. I took his divorce papers. I severed all ties with him. Whether he lives or dies today, it has absolutely nothing to do with me. Oh? Truly so heartless. Song Yan looked down at the killing field outside. His eyes turned completely sinister. Second Lord sang. Break one of his legs first. Teach him some manners. Whoosh! A frost-tipped arrow tore through the air. It drove straight through Huaixu's long thigh. Crimson blood poured out instantly, staining his pristine white robes. He let out a muffled grunt and crashed heavily onto one knee on the sharp gravel. But he stubbornly kept his head up, staring right at the broken window where Song Yan and I stood. His breathtaking face was as pale as paper. Song Yan, come at me. Let her go right now. Song Yan completely ignored his roar. He turned to me slowly, his voice sickly sweet. Ning! Seeing the untouchable Grand Chancellor fall into the mud. Does it make you happy? My whole body turned to ice. I gritted my teeth so hard I couldn't force a single word out. Second Lord sang. Aim for his other. My mental defenses shattered entirely. I threw myself at Song Yan, desperately grabbing his raised arm. Stop shooting. I am begging you. I sobbed wildly. The sick smile on Song Yan's lips froze. His fingers dug into my jaw so hard his knuckles turned white. Huaixu's abyss-like eyes filled with pure violence. Cold sweat poured down his forehead from the agonizing pain, but he roared through his teeth. Animal! Do not scare her. Song Yan's eyes turned terrifyingly cold and venomous. He met Huaixu's furious, bloodshot stare with absolute provocation. A second later, he violently yanked my face toward him and crushed his lips against mine. The dry, rough, brutal touch carried a disgusting, destructive rage. It sent violent waves of nausea straight up from my stomach. I fought back wildly, kicking and thrashing with everything I had. He pressed against my lips and spit a poisoned curse. If you want him shot full of arrows right now, keep fighting me. My body went completely rigid. Filled with despair, I stopped resisting. Song Yan pushed his luck, crushing my lips and violating me. The suppressed, extreme disgust finally erupted like a tidal wave. I exploded with a sudden, desperate strength, shoving him away violently. My knees gave out. I collapsed onto the ash-covered bricks and vomited uncontrollably. Shoot him. Standing tall above me, Song Yan wiped the vomit from his mouth and issued the final death order. A deafening, thunderous gunshot exploded outside the temple. My soul nearly left my body. My brain went entirely blank. I literally crawled and scrambled wildly to the broken window, screaming his name in absolute agony. Huaixu. But the horrific image I expected, Huaixu dead in a pool of blood, did not happen. The man who took the bullet and fell to the ground was my uncle. A massive bloody hole was blown straight through his back. He collapsed into the mud like a pile of garbage. Huaixu held his left arm high. Bright red blood dripped steadily from it. In his hand he gripped a smoking, intricate flintlock pistol. Not far away, a massive wave of heavily armored Imperial guards flooded the clearing. In the blink of an eye they surrounded the area with iron shields. Not even a fly could escape. Song Yan's face mutated. Like a rabid dog backed into a corner, he grabbed my collar and dragged me violently to the second floor. Hiding behind a massive ruined pillar. Outside, the commander of the Imperial Guards held an iron megaphone, shouting strict warnings at Song Yan. Song Yan never expected the royal army to arrive so incredibly fast. Song Yan strangled my neck, hiding perfectly in the blind spot where the snipers couldn't aim. He screamed hysterically, "I am strapped with high-grade explosives. Tell Huaixu to come in here alone. If anyone disobeys, I will take her to hell with me." My lips parted in pain. I gasped for air like a dying fish, my vision going black. "Song Yan, calm down. Don't make a fatal mistake. I am perfectly awake. In your past life you willingly burned to death with Huaixu. What, now that it's my turn to die with you, you refuse?" I beat my fists weakly against his iron arm. "I don't want to. I absolutely refuse." Song Yan's voice grew completely deranged with grief. "I had the perfect plan. I could have reversed everything and fixed it. But why did you have to remember everything too? Give me back the Ning who trusted me completely." I clawed hopelessly at the empty air. The last faint light in my eyes was fading to black. "Song Yan." A cold, lethally familiar voice pressed down heavily from just a few steps away. "I am here. Let her go." The iron claws vanished from my throat. I collapsed onto the floor, curling up and coughing so violently my lungs burned. Tears completely blurred my vision. Relying entirely on raw instinct, I looked up at Huaixu's blurred figure. He looked like a descending god. Shivering, I reached out both hands toward him. The blood from the horrifying arrow wound on his white robes had already dried dark. His left hand, still gripping the pistol, was hastily wrapped in a white cloth. He actually looked worse and more pathetic than when we burned to death in our past life. But from the exact second he stepped onto the second floor, his deep, sharp eyes welded themselves onto me. He didn't look away for a fraction of a second, terrified I would be hurt again. Song Yan violently yanked me up. He held me hostage, dragging me backward. He pulled out a short dagger glowing with blue poison and pressed it ruthlessly against my fragile neck. He let out a cold laugh. "Huaixu, since we are playing a new game this lifetime, let's make the stakes even higher." He jutted his chin, pointing at a coat thrown over a nearby altar. It was completely soaked in explosive oil. "Put it on." I recognized that coat instantly. I would recognize it if it were turned to ash. "No. Absolutely do not wear it." I thrashed violently, fighting with my life. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, my voice cracked into a desperate, blood-curdling scream. "No." Song Yan looked like a complete lunatic. A twisted, hyper-excited laugh tore from his throat. "Ning. In your past life, Huaixu had the guts to die with you. What about this life? How much are you willing to sacrifice for him?" "No." I went completely feral. I clawed at Song Yan's hand, leaving deep, bloody scratches down to the bone. He clamped down on my throat, sneering coldly. "Do you really think the Supreme Chancellor can beat a desperate criminal with nothing to lose? So what if he builds an iron fortress to protect you? Even if you hide in your bedroom forever, I can easily bribe a traitor to drag you out. I planned this absolute death trap for years. Today in this ruined temple, either his blood paints the walls or you die." Huaixu couldn't even hear our muffled fight. He ordered sharply, "Move that poison dagger away from her. I will wear it." "Huaixu, run. Leave me alone." I sobbed uncontrollably, my voice breaking. "I beg you, run." He acted like he didn't hear a word. His dark eyes were fixed dead on the single drop of bright red blood welling up from the cut on my pale neck. Without a second of hesitation, he picked up the oil-soaked, explosive-rigged coat and put it on. A sharp hiss. A fire starter ignited a terrifyingly short fuse. My soul shattered. I closed my eyes in absolute despair. Song Yan suddenly shoved me violently forward. Ning! The death game has started. Choose one. I stumbled, catching my balance right in the middle of the lethal standoff. Covered in tears, I took one agonizing step toward Huaixu. He immediately stepped back like he saw a poisonous snake. Ning! Do not come near me. Huaixu's voice was impossibly heavy, carrying an undeniable fatal warning. This code is packed with explosives. Any collision will blow us to pieces. I was nailed dead to the spot. My feet grew roots. I didn't dare move an inch. I was not afraid of death. But if I blatantly ran to Huaixu right in front of this lunatic, it would be throwing oil on the fire. It would completely trigger Song Yan's twisted, deranged mind. He would probably instantly detonate the main fuse. Ning! Accept your fate. Deep in your bones, you only love yourself. You and your hypocritical uncle are the exact same kind of selfish, heartless garbage. Song Yan stood where he was, sneering mockingly. Huaixu slowly backed up to the broken window overlooking the cliff. He gave me one final deeply longing look. Then he turned his eyes away. Song Yan, the death of your father at the dam. I truly regret it. Shut up. You corrupt dog. You have no right to speak of my father. Song Yan, who had been enjoying the show, snapped instantly. Veins popped on his forehead. He took a violent step forward. You wealthy nobles born with golden spoons. You never know suffering. Have you ever had a single drop of mercy or true heart? But the official records are absolutely clear, Huaixu said coldly. Your father broke the rules. He refused to wear the protective armor while supervising the site. After the accident, my father still paid a massive amount of treasury silver to properly settle your family. Shut your mouth. A sharp, brutally mocking smile slowly formed on Huaixu's handsome face. You went through all this effort to set up a suicide trap. But in the end, you are nothing but a useless failure throwing a temper tantrum. My entire body shook uncontrollably. This world had gone completely insane. Every single word Huaixu spoke was a lethal blade stabbing directly into Song Yan's most sensitive, fatal wound. Was Huaixu actually tired of living? Was he begging for death? Song Yan pulled 2 flint stones from somewhere. He slammed them violently against the ground, striking sparks. Boom! A massive explosion of fire erupted around us instantly. The sickening, dizzying stench finally made sense. Song Yan had poured explosive oil all around the edges of the temple long before we woke up. It was you arrogant nobles who destroyed my perfect life. Song Yan's eyes were blood red. He stalked toward me like a demon from hell. In the roaring firelight, his half-healed face twisted into something terrifying. Ning! Why didn't you choose me just now? If you had just been honest. If you had just told me you were disgusted by my ruined face. I never would have been so brutal to myself when I staged that accident. A bucket of freezing water crashed over my head. The catastrophic fire that ruined his face years ago. He said it himself. It was a staged tragedy. You are an absolute lunatic. I whispered. Yes. If I didn't push myself to the brink of death, how else could I use your endless guilt? How else could I steal Huaixu's top-secret cabinet intelligence from you? This venomous snake had hidden in the dark for over a decade. Today, he finally ripped off his gentle, gentlemanly mask, exposing his most deranged fangs. His broken, hysterical laugh sounded like a screeching bellows. Ning! If you had just dropped him and chosen me, it wouldn't have ended this tragically. Now you can only blame yourself for being blind. The road to hell is dark. Let's walk it together. With that, he violently ripped out the main fire starter connected to the central fuse. I lost every single shred of reason. Without a second of hesitation, I spun around, lunged at Huaixu, and crushed him into my arms. Ning! Huaixu let out a blood-curdling roar. A second later, boom! A massive explosion shattered the wooden window frames. My ears plunged into absolute, dead silence. A sharp, deafening ring pierced my skull like tiny poison needles. All I could see was Huaixu's paper-white face. He was screaming something at me in absolute terror, but I couldn't hear a sound. In my daze, I felt like my body had already been blown to pieces. I was completely numb. I couldn't gather an ounce of strength. But then I thought, If I can die in his arms, I am not afraid at all. Was I really not afraid? Then why were tears pouring down my face like rain? The deafness only lasted a fraction of a second. The next moment, chaotic, deafening shouts crashed into my ears like a tidal wave. The rebel is dead. The leader's corpse is on the east side of the second floor. Commander! Fuses cut in time. The explosives did not detonate. Hostages are safe. Area secured. No hidden bombs found. The fire is spreading. Escort the Chancellor and Madam out immediately. 2 guards grabbed me by the arms and dragged me out. As we left the temple doors, I whipped my head back. Song Yin lay face down, stiff as a board in a pool of blood. He was completely dead. A warm, slightly calloused hand covered my eyes completely. The biting, freezing wind swept away the suffocating stench of gunpowder and blood. Outside, the clashing of armor and the whinnying of horses echoed everywhere. Endless torches flickered, overlapping with the blood-red sunset on the horizon. My knees gave out completely. I collapsed into the ankle-deep snow, shaking violently. Juan's loud, vulgar cursing suddenly reached my ears. Right now it sounded like heavenly music. Right under the Emperor's nose. The magistrate clears out bandit dens every day. And these deranged rabid dogs still play with explosives. Take every single one of these lawless bastards to the death row. Slice them to pieces. Tear them apart with horses. Flay these suicidal animals alive. Brother, do not let a single one of them escape. Arrest them all. Alright, stop screaming. Go check if Ning is hurt. Leave the cleanup to the guards. One spotted me kneeling in the snow instantly. She screamed at the top of her lungs. Ning, get up right now. You have a baby in your belly. Why the hell are you kneeling in the freezing snow? Nearby, the military engineers were carefully removing the explosive rig from Huaixu. The second he heard her, his massive frame froze completely. He whipped his head around, his eyes locking onto me like daggers. Before Juan could even lift her skirts to run to me, Huaixu brutally ripped off the highly dangerous coat. Without a single word, he marched over, scooped me up while I was still talking to Juan, and strode toward his sandalwood carriage with a terrifyingly dark face. Hey, do you have any manners? You can't just steal someone without saying a word. Slam. The heavy carriage curtain dropped mercilessly, entirely blocking out Juan's jumping protests. He unceremoniously shoved me deep into the soft blankets of the carriage and climbed in right after me. He didn't say a word. He just locked his dark, brooding eyes dead onto me. A chill ran down my spine. I instinctively shrank back into the corner. You don't look at me like that. I'm a little scared. You still know how to be scared. You knew it was packed with explosives, and you completely ignored it and threw yourself at me. Do you think we were playing a game of catch in the garden? After a brief, terrifying silence, he unleashed a furious, blistering scolding right at my face. In 2 lifetimes, Huaixu had always held me in his hands, terrified of breaking me. He had never spoken to me with such harsh, explosive anger. My nose stung. Tears immediately poured down my cheeks. That was a massive amount of explosives, strapped directly to my body. He was practically boiling with rage. The veins on his forehead throbbed wildly. If that lunatic Song Yen had actually ignited the main fuse, the 2 of us would have been blown into bloody meat paste. Seeing he was furious enough to keep yelling, I just closed my eyes and slumped weakly against his broad chest. Oh no. I am so shocked. I am passing out. Huaixu was completely choked by my shameless acting. He took a sharp, heavy breath. The veins on his forehead practically danced. A split second later, his arms tightened violently. He crushed me into his chest, like he wanted to embed me into his bones. Only then did I realize the truth. This Supreme Chancellor, the man who wouldn't flinch if a mountain collapsed, was trembling violently. His iron arms were shaking uncontrollably. I am sorry. My tone was too harsh. I scared you. He roughly messed up my hair, pressing his chin hard against the top of my head. He fought desperately to suppress the lingering terror and shaking in his voice. I had already calculated it perfectly. I was waiting for the exact moment to jump straight out the broken window and off the cliff. That way, even if the snipers missed and the explosives went off, the blast radius wouldn't have touched you at all. But you stupid girl, why did you recklessly charge at me and hug me like that? Back at the estate, I never knew you had such terrifying feral strength. In that panic, how could I think about any of that? I heard storytellers say when facing explosives you have to hit the ground. But I couldn't exactly go hug that lunatic Song Yan. Your lying mouth. Huaixu was completely speechless. Faced with my twisted logic, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He couldn't bear to scold me anymore. A miracle among tragedies. We walked through hell and we survived. The arrow wound on your leg. Did the doctor bandage it and pull out the poison? I asked anxiously. Yes. I don't believe you. Take off your clothes and let me see. Ning. He looked embarrassed, lowering his voice. The wound. It is very high up on my inner thigh. Without a second thought, I bent down and reached for his jade belt buckle. We are an old married couple. What are you being so shy about? Juan's loud, brash voice echoed right outside the thick carriage curtain. Yes. Right there. I strongly suspect my poor, suffering sister was brutally beaten by her abusive ex-husband. And that bastard kidnapped her in broad daylight. You're an officer at the magistrate's office. You can handle this, right? As she loudly filed her fake police report, she boldly yanked the heavy curtain open. Blinding torchlight flooded the carriage. I was in a wildly suggestive position. I was kneeling right between Huaixu's thighs. My eager little hands were planted right on his belt. The complicated jade buckle was already half undone. Juan gripped a communication jade token in her hand. Her face went completely blank. Like being struck by lightning, we stared at each other in dead, awkward silence for 3 full seconds. Then she violently slammed the curtain shut. From outside, her pitched voice awkwardly tried to save the situation. Well, sorry to interrupt your official business, brother. By the way, if a stray dog on the street gets brutally force-fed dog food, does your office handle that? Never mind the magistrate. I need to find the local chief who handles petty disputes. On the day Huaixu and I hosted our second grand wedding banquet, Juan was an honored guest at the main table. She looked entirely unappetizing, barely touching the exquisite dishes. When we walked over to toast her, Huaixu gave her an elegant, polite smile. Ning has mentioned you to me often. She said if the man she remarried turned out to be me, something incredibly terrible would happen. Stared down by his unfathomable deep eyes, one suddenly remembered her wild threat. If her new husband is that corrupt dog, I will eat dirt while doing a handstand. She looked at me. I looked at her. Dead silence. We just stared at each other. I only mentioned it as a passing joke. Who knew Huaixu's memory was so terrifyingly good? Juan let out 2 dry, awkward laughs and raised her wine cup. Well, the past is the past. Let it vanish like smoke. I toast to you both. I wish the Chancellor and Madam a harmonious century-long marriage. Huaixu gave a slow nod, his smile gentle. Thank you. After the toast, I lifted the heavy skirts of my bright red wedding dress, scurrying to keep up with Huaixu. I muttered, that is ancient history. Why did you bring that up on our wedding day? He chuckled softly. I was just curious. Just curious? Yes. I hesitated, then smiled slyly. Lean your ear down. I will tell you a secret. I grabbed his broad shoulder and whispered the full, disgusting threat right into his ear. Huaixu's cold, handsome eyebrows shot up. An uncontrollable laugh broke across his face. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. What if she actually did it, and dragged me down to eat it with her? What would you do? Chancellor, where would you hide your precious, noble face? Ha ha ha. My bright, ringing laughter echoed through the grand hall. Huaixu just stood there watching me quietly. His eyes were so soft they could melt into water. The banquet ended. The guests moved to the rear gardens to watch the opera and enjoy the view. At dusk, I took off the heavy phoenix crown and changed into soft, comfortable casual clothes. Huaixu held my hand as we hopped across the flagstones in the maple-covered courtyard. In the past, you always promised to take me south to see the water towns, but we never made it. The past? Meaning? Oh, the 38-year-old Chancellor, I said casually. Huaixu frowned slightly. He sounds old and faded. He wasn't old at all. I smacked my lips, remembering. 38-year-old you was incredibly handsome, just deeper and more restrained. But he couldn't handle being teased either. The 38-year-old Huaixu carried the calm, abyssal grace of time. He was a devastatingly attractive man. Huaixu looked deep in thought. For the rest of the walk he seemed entirely distracted. Night fell. The second I stepped into our bedroom, I was captured. An aggressively dominant presence struck me from behind. A burning solid chest pressed against my back, sending a jolt straight through my spine. Click. He locked the heavy door latch. Huaixu's usually icy voice was incredibly thick with desire. Could that old, faded man understand his madam the way I do? I froze. A sudden realization hit me. So this was why he had been acting so weird all day. He was actually jealous. I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing. Hey you! Huaixu's large hand grabbed my jaw, pinning me against the bronze mirror. His dark eyes hid lethal hooks. Couldn't handle being teased? He let out a cold sneer. That is because he was old and weak. He couldn't perform. You shouldn't talk about yourself like that. Madam is actually defending him? His tone was practically dripping with vinegar. The ancient jealousy jar was completely smashed. No, I cried, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Have you ever thought about this? 10 years from now, when you remember this conversation, won't you have to desperately prove you're still young and fierce? Huaixu paused. He actually considered it with absolute seriousness. Logically speaking, yes. If you are competing against your future self for favor, why am I the one who has to suffer? He acted like he didn't hear a word. He stared darkly at my half-undressed reflection in the bronze mirror. I truly wish I could make that old man watch. My face burned bright red. I covered my cheeks in pure shame. Stop talking. Huaixu leaned down and forcefully sealed my lips. His low vow carried an undeniable dominance. Ning. In this life and every life to come, you belong entirely to me. That night was probably the most mentally exhausting moment of my entire life. I had to cry and admit that the young hot-blooded him was vastly superior to the 38-year-old man. Then I had to survive his endless, relentless interrogations, confirming that his 38-year-old self was still incredibly brave and invincible. The night was quiet. Water-like moonlight pierced the thin silk window screens, falling gently on his flawless profile. Huaixu had finally fallen into a deep sleep. I reached out, tracing his eyebrows with feather-light touches. My heart felt like it was holding a warm, glowing furnace. In the dreams of my past life, I had clung to the 38-year-old Huaixu countless times, staring at the ruins of our lives, sighing. If only we had found our peace sooner. How wonderful it would have been. For 10 full years we ground each other down. We lived under the same roof, but tortured each other like bitter enemies. During those long 10 years my dead ash-like heart must have beaten for him. On those late nights when he secretly tucked the blankets around me, I truly had a fleeting impulse to hug his waist and say, "Husband, let us make peace." But Song Yan's ruined face from that fire was a poisoned thorn nailed deep into my heart. Every time my hidden love tried to grow, that thorn stabbed violently into my chest, leaving me bleeding. It constantly warned me that Huaixu was a ruthless politician who destroyed my family. Perhaps these feelings were frozen and suppressed for far too long. The moment the fog cleared and the misunderstanding shattered, the imprisoned love exploded like a broken dam. It gave me that brief, wildly passionate time with him before we died. I loved him far more and far longer than I ever realized myself. Ning, why aren't you sleeping? Huaixu's sleepy, hoarse voice mumbled beside me. I turned, holding his breathtaking face in my hands. I leaned in and placed a feather-light kiss on his warm lips. Huaixu, I love you. Pressed against my palm, Huaixu's heart instantly started hammering wildly like war drums. This man. He truly was a block of wood who couldn't handle being teased at all. Ning, I love you too. More than anything in this world. He accurately captured my retreating lips. He completely hijacked the kiss, deepening it with burning passion. I was almost suffocated by his sudden, fierce attack. I begged for mercy. Hey you. What crazy mood are you in now? I just had a nightmare. What did you dream about? Huaixu's eyes snapped open. His deep, unfathomable eyes hid incredibly heavy, complex emotions, like a dark storm ready to tear the sky apart. I dreamed about our tragic past life. My breath caught in my throat. Truly. Yes. His long fingers gently swept a sweat-drenched strand of hair from my cheek. His gaze was so devoted it felt like he was looking at the world's last miracle. Ning. I just feel incredibly blessed. The heavens took pity on us. They actually gave us a chance to wake up from that grand dream and start over. The night was still long. The moonlight shyly hid behind the clouds. The wind passing through the hall was tender and lingering. The warm incense floated through the silk curtains. The wind caught the window screens, gently ringing the copper bells beneath the eaves. Inside the bedroom there was only the sound of two hearts, beating tightly together, echoing each other perfectly. I felt like I had melted into an endless pool of warm spring water, tightly holding the cold, brilliant moon in the sky. I pressed my forehead against his and whispered, "When exactly did my husband fall in love with me? Was it the day my uncle forced us to marry?" My cold, pristine moon answered with a voice as rich as aged wine. "No. I fell in love with you. Long before that."
Imagine this. The ruthless Chancellor you've despised your entire life chooses to burn to ashes right beside you. You die in his arms. And then, your eyes snap open. You're back 10 years in the past. But this time, you know the truth. Your sweet childhood friend is actually a deranged sociopath, but who orchestrated your fire death. It's time for revenge, and time to protect the husband who would literally die for you. But here's the twist. When that psychotic villain kidnaps you again and straps you with explosives, your untouchable husband walks right into the trap and puts the bomb on himself. So, I need to know. If you were in her shoes, would you stay and risk blowing up together? Or would you scream for him to run? Type stay or run in the comments below. For the full audio translation of this insane novel of politics, obsession, and rebirth, hit that subscribe button and check out the full video on my channel right now.